That's good.
It's been a small victory.
Okay, so those are the two things that were left over. Actually, those ones, and then that one. Yes. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to catch up with that along.
And then I'll add some rules so that you know
Okay.
everything is the same. Same thing with that.
Okay.
No, we just ran out and I didn't realize.
It was just more confusing to try and do it than it was trying to.
I know. Linda, I'll never stop us up.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Take a roll call.
Ms. Howe?
Here.
Ms. Butler-Challenger here. Mr. Wisswasser?
Here.
Mr. Elmerici?
Here.
Mr. Benzi?
Here.
Mr. Fuens-Bliss?
Here.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Here.
Thank you.
Those who have an agenda, at least now it's called Civil Reflections. Number 2, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I supplied a amended board meeting agenda. So those are here, we have that because it hasn't been accepted yet. The only thing that I changed or added to it so that you would know in red were the items that we didn't finish at our last meeting. And then on the third page, I put in red closed session, that's what we're going to have. And I added the newly formed committee. So anything that you see in red, you see as changed. So we have an approval of the amended.
You got a copy of it. I wanted to see what she had read.
Oh,
I let Judy have
Well,
mine.
I gave you one.
Yeah, you did, but I let Judy have it, so they can have
Oh,
one.
Judy. Shame, no, that's okay, Judy. You can see it now.
Thank you, Judy, for sharing.
All right, what you can do to add to yours is, well,
The old one.
yeah, that's the, well, depends on if it's accepted.
Just a minute.
So some of these things are in red that were already on the old agenda.
That's correct. All I did was add an unfinished business, what we didn't finish at our last meeting.
What about these items on
And
the last page
The last
3?
page, all I did was capitalize closed session. So I wanted you to know that that's what I did.
Got it.
And a purchase, and then I added committee. So that's all there is. Other than that,
Move to accept the budget as amended by,
not a budget. See you that. You're
oh, sorry,
okay.
it's long there. The agenda, thank you. The agenda as amended by the supervisor.
Right, is there a second? Oh, we need a second?
Yes, you do.
That's what I thought. It's fine with me. Is there a second to add the 3 agenda items that we did not talk about last week, and apparently, or last March 7th?
Are these items that you two still want us to talk about?
I removed one of them, because I wanted it to go to the recreation committee to be submitted to the CSP, so I wasn't prepared to talk about the, priority health, outdoor fitness support.
That is tailored.
Another question. Are we, maybe I'm missing something here, but I think we did this once before earlier in our career here with this term of office people we have. We talked about board agendas and the fact that the superintendent was charged with the duty of preparing the agenda.
Correct.
And my question is, are we setting a precedent here by doing this and changing this so now that we're gonna interrupt every time we have an agenda? If somebody doesn't like it, they're just gonna do it, and the superintendent or supervisor doesn't like it, we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna change that? Is that what we're gonna do here? If that's the case, then what is the reason why we charge the superintendent for taking care of the agenda and putting things on the agenda, and then who's in charge of the business township to begin with? That's my question.
Should I answer it?
I don't care who answers
Okay.
it.
May I?
Sure, go ahead.
So,
You know what?
well, no, my interpretation is, we always have a challenge with, when it comes to approval of the budget, and then,
It's not a budget, this is an agenda.
I'm so sorry. I keep saying budget.
I did what budgets every year, I'm sorry.
Maybe I should just say go.
About that.
So this non-budget agenda, so we always have a challenge with the agenda. I for one appreciate, I think what the intent was to just highlight in red what she was going to bring to this meeting as an amendment to the budget, which I think we all have the right to amend it. Oh, man.
That's what you were exactly right.
I apologize. Apparently my vehicle will not move away from.
Brenda knows she'll put it in the agenda instead of budget, so she knows.
Anyway, that's my sense now.
All right.
Could I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Did you ask Karen to add these things and she said no?
No, I went to the board rules. Board rules state.
No, you don't need to read them to me, I know.
Oh, okay.
I'm just wondering if Karen mistakenly left these off or refused to put them on, because I think to Steve's point, like to solve this problem that we have every meeting is better communication between you and Karen, and I know you're working on that.
Yes.
So that, I was just trying to get to the, because if Karen said no, then I think we have a problem.
No, the only problem, no, I did not go Karen with it because our business rules state, and she's been here much longer than I have, but our business rules state, that are our board rules, that business items on the agenda, let's see, how does it go? It says business items on the agenda and not yet acted upon at the time of adjournment, when we adjourn, will be placed on the agenda for the next meeting or special meeting, which of course we didn't have, if no one's called. If one is called special. So I only went to the board rules, and the board rules state if we do not look at or do not talk about business items, they go on the next agenda. 2.5. No, I know you know.
You've read it and I see it, you've given it to me, I got it
I
straight.
did, I made sure everybody had a copy.
My thought again, just in the future, to avoid these things is for you to speak to Karen.
Or for Karen to speak to me.
Karen wouldn't speak to you and not, when she doesn't know that you have something to tell her. She's not gonna ask you.
Just ask. Wouldn't that?
No, it's not Karen's job to come to you and ask if you've got thoughts on your mind.
The board meeting, the board member, you have more knowledge than I do.
You brought me what you had for the packet, so
Yes.
I would have assumed if you had changes to
And
the
I don't
agenda,
see
you
it.
would have given
I
it to
don't
me
see
at
it
that
until you
time.
copy it, and then I get a chance to see it, and then I know over the weekend when I'm looking at it, if something's out of order. And what's out of order is the fact that our board meeting rules had not been followed. So that's the only, so that's why I have it, and that's why I gave you a copy of it. Any other questions?
So the superintendent's report is already part of,
No,
The-
well, she hasn't done the hiring. That was the other, now, you can change it, you can vote to change that if you want. But at that meeting, on the 7th, we were going to have the agenda that dealt with hiring.
right, she's gonna give her update, which is always about hiring when that's appropriate.
That's what it said.
No, I'm not arguing what it says, I'm now telling you something. And she's not prepared for the national fitness thing, she's deciding to move that to the newly
That's
created.
because that was supposed to be the deputy.
Can I just finish what I'm saying?
Sure.
So okay, Taylor is also not prepared to talk about this.
Well,
So what we're really talking about is the Prine and Newhoff,
okay,
which is already on the agenda.
let me try try this one more time.
No, I understood you, Marie.
You didn't.
I'm giving you a different perspective.
I understand your perspective, and you have to understand you wrote the rules. You were here when these rules were written.
You're right, and I wrote them right for this moment. I foresaw this coming.
And then if you foresaw it coming, then you knew that we had not, at the time of our meeting on the 7th, had adjusted or had talked about 3 items. So all I did was put those 3 items on the agenda.
Marie, I'm telling you, I follow everything you've said. I understand. But it's bureaucratic, right? I understand what you're saying, and you're right. It says that in our rules. But
That's the issue.
the issue is one item is no longer appropriate for us to talk about. 2 items are already on the agenda.
Okay. I'm going to say it just one more time.
No, please do not. I understand what you're saying. It's not a lack of understanding. We just don't agree.
No, that's true, we don't agree. So now we'll take a vote.
No, you don't have a
And
second.
I withdraw my motion. So I would like to adjust it though, but I'm not quite sure what's clear on this agenda.
All right.
I make a motion to put it on original agenda of Monday, March 21st, 2022.
Second.
So the amendment is that we'll take the original, which is what everybody has, so we're not going to discuss any of the issues, or at least, as far as I know, the issues that were on. And,
We're going to discuss 2 of 3 of them.
you know, nobody recognized that you were ready to speak. You didn't ask to, and that's what my job is.
You have never, ever enforced that.
Really?
Really?
I always enforce it.
Let's move on, come on.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, grow up. Let's come on.
It's been seconded, so we take a vote.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes,
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Thank you.
You need to get louder. All right, so the agenda, the old agenda has been approved, and this agenda, the amended one is not being approved. So let's put that. All right, number 4, disclosure of interest, of conflict of interest. Doesn't appear to be any, so we'll move on to public statement number 1. Is that okay?
Am I being recognized?
Have you raised your hand?
You're asking me a question.
Yes, I am.
That is okay. Thank you for asking.
You're more than welcome. So, public statement number 1.
Marie?
Are we talking about what's on here now?
Yes.
This one, yes,
Okay.
that's what it says, is designated for the statements that are currently on the
All right.
agenda.
I'm Dean Balzer, and I came here to object to you buying the property on Park Lake Road. If we have enough money to keep buying and fixing up stuff, and I see we have another thing for, you want a museum, our taxes are too damn high. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Couple of things. The Green and Newhoff proposal, application, that sounds pretty smart. The Recreation Committee 7th member, that sounds like a good idea. It just seems logical that that would break a tie in the event. I'm talking about agenda items. And if I could suggest a possible update, maybe change to the virtual public comment equipment. I should probably just forward it to you, but I had talked to Karen some time ago about maybe a short throw projector for right here. I just think it would be a lot better than a static television, and it would be larger, and it would also be moderately portable, so you could actually use it in a different room in case you needed to use it in the other conference room or even at the community center. There's some new laser projectors out that I think would lend themselves well. They literally only go 1 foot away from the wall, and they either set on a tripod or a table right in front of literally right in front of the wall, and shoot straight up. And this would be up to a 120-inch screen that could be right on the wall and be seen with overhead lighting. And you wouldn't have the bleed or the burn-in that you could possibly have with the television screen. But anyway, if you're interested, I think that's something that we should look at. It involves a special screen as well, but I think it would be a good idea, and that's something that would allow much more viewing exposure to the audience and to the board members. And I think that's about it. And I don't have really positive feelings about the closed door session tonight, but I'm all in for that purchase of 16086 Park Lake Road. Okay.
Thank you, Ray. Is there anybody else that has public comments? And we're going to move on to items from the county, from the state, federal, or other agencies. Item 6. Commissioner Stacy?
Hi. Well, we're pretty much having two Ways and Means committees a month now. One purely to deal with capital projects and ARPA funding, and then the other to do routine business. So we had a discussion with Sheriff Giroux and our architect, and they're probably going to be ready to present their study and their findings for the proposed public safety building next month. We've seen some interior schematics about how they want to lay it out, and it seems to be moving in the right direction. It's very complicated, the whole for want of a better term, industry of law enforcement, where it's moving in the last 25 years. So we're very thankful that Vice Chair Bruce DeLong on our board is a former corrections officer at the existing jail. He retired, I don't know how it was, 10, 12 years ago, but having a board member who's had actual direct expertise in the corrections field has been very helpful for us to try and navigate exactly what kind of facility we're prepared to have, because obviously for us it's hitting that perfect window of, you don't want something that's too large with a lot of wasted space based on where the movement is in terms of trying to divert people and move them out of jail incarceration. At the same time, you don't want to be too small based on the fact that we're a growing community. We're going to continue to grow over the next 10 to 20 years. So you want to make sure it's adequate so you don't have to immediately put on an annex or an addition 10 to 15 years out. But we should be seeing something more concrete to present to the public. Really, I'm here because I wasn't able to attend that listening session or education session at the county that I know a lot of township officials there. So I don't know who here was in attendance. If you could let me know if it's permissible, Ms. Howe, if I could just ask, what your feedback was on that meeting. Was it helpful to you? Did it help crystallize your plans going forward? I know Trustee Almarigi had his hand up over here.
Thank you. The session was actually really helpful. I'm encouraged that the county has hired a consultant, Guidehouse, to support the county in moving forward with broadband as well as ARPA funding. So I learned a lot. It was really nice to see the direction that the county is going, in terms of what they're prioritizing. I think part of that appears to be northern Bath and Victor Township based on population, as well as many areas being unserved and underserved in terms of broadband capacity. So I found it incredibly helpful.
I mean, the key is really we've settled on fiber. It's fiber or bust. We're not going to go into anything else. No more. We're not going to look at the Starlink system. Thankfully Elon Musk is helping fight the Russians in Ukraine. But we're looking at fiber. Is really the key is 20, 25 years ago, Okemos was the place to be. It had the good new school district. Everyone wanted to move out there. About the last 10 to 15 years, it's really been DeWitt. And we think to make sure that we hold on to the title of we're the center of attention when it comes to residential suburban development, we have to make sure that we've got a lead in terms of broadband capacity, because based on the pandemic, it showed that having access to broadband is not enough. You have to have access to a sufficient capacity of broadband, because when everybody's kids were at home studying and learning, and then all the parents were also at home working from home, suddenly we were kind of clogging the pipeline. So we think it's important that even if we have a certain adequate or moderate service, that we have to make sure we upgrade that for our population base to be the highest level of service.
So I'll just say two other things. One is your comment about commitment to broadband or fiber only. I think it's a great step that really demonstrates the commitment of the county to what the needs are of our population. So I was highly encouraged by that. The other is the organization that the county is doing in terms of working to collaborate and partner with the townships and pooling ARPA funds to successfully apply for grants. One of the things that the consultant said was that Clinton County was far more organized than many other counties in the state. So all of that is very much appreciated on my part.
That's all the comments I have. Anybody else have any questions?
No questions?
I've got one.
Any more questions?
Here.
Sure.
I got, the sirens that you guys keep working on, are we getting close to being able to use it?
I feel I think there was another test schedule, but I think we're pretty much there. Like, this all comes down to the switch over and the upgrade of our 911 system. And boy, if anyone has any questions or to ask Chris Collum, if it's not a priority, just wait a few weeks, because she is really inundated in trying to make sure this is going as smooth as possible right now.
Okay.
Good man. All right, is there any other? I'm looking both ways now, so I can make sure that we'll be in touch. Thank you. Is there anybody else? I don't see any other. I think you were it. All right. Going to the consent agenda. And we have those on file, so.
I move we approve the Senate agenda as printed.
So now we'll take a vote on the consent agenda.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Thank you.
And also on that, we have the approval of the minutes. Number 8, approval of the minutes from Bath Township. We have 2 that need to be approved.
I move approval of the Board of Trustees meeting minutes from March 7th and March 10th.
Second.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 9 is the approval of vouchers.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers.
So we have a second approval of vouchers. Vote.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 10 is the treasury report. There's no attachment. We have a report.
I have a report. I don't have an attachment. I apologize. I was off last week, part of the week. But I can give you a report on tax settlement because I had that done before I left last week, and we got our paperwork in the mail when I was gone here. I can give you a little bit of an update on what we did this year for property tax collection. If you bear with me just a second. Okay, for the 2021 tax collection, which we started July 1st in 2021, we levied total to collect was $21,364,306.89. Now that includes winter and summer both. The total taxes that were collected for the 21 year was $20,897,351.59. So that left a delinquent amount for interest and penalty and everything for summer and winter and all billing types. This includes the personal and the real ad valorem. Delinquent taxes was $466,789.09. Roughly from last year, we're up about $100,000 the way it looks to me. From last year, we have 210 parcels delinquent. That's up about 100 from last year. With that being said, you've got to look at our total amount of taxes and our parcels and everything that we had compared to last year, how much our tax roll increased in the amount of billed parcels, which increased quite a little bit. We had 4,074 in Bath Township alone parcels. So that out of that 4,074, I can tell you that 210 people are delinquent in their taxes. That didn't get them paid for one reason or another. The total personal property delinquent parcels, that used to be a big deal. Anymore, it's not as big because our personal property tax administration has changed a lot. They have an $80,000 threshold. Providing you fill out the right paperwork, you won't get a assessment from the assessor. But the total there was, we only had 9 personal property taxes that are delinquent this year, a total of $18,242.92. All the other things in the tax roll are pretty close to the same. I didn't bring it out here, and I probably will provide this to you at the next meeting. But we did a study, the treasurers did, in the treasurer's office, and the county actually did, and we have lots of reports we can run. And in the county, we had, in 2020, we were about 1.88% collected, or uncollected. And that we were one of the lowest there is in the county. And the reason being is because the cities tend to have a little higher delinquencies, and the villages do as well. They have a little higher tax rate. But then you get to the farmland, you think that out in the country in the general law townships, that they would be a little more better about paying their taxes than what we are in our rural areas. It's really not the truth. And if you understand agriculture and farming and all this stuff, you know why. Because they operate off of PA 165, or 116, excuse me, and they get checks from the government, and their check doesn't usually come, it comes somewhere between the end of April to 1st of May, and that's why they end up being delinquent. So the guys let their taxes go delinquent, and then they take it and pay them. That's why they're a little higher. They're all in the 3, 3.5, even 4%. So Bath Township's in pretty good shape. It's right in line with right in line with Watertown. We're actually ahead of DeWitt a little bit. So for tax and people paying their taxes, we're pretty good. But I will stress to you that I know I've told you this before, I do believe, I agree with other people that talk, I think our taxes in Bath Township are mighty high. And I think that we need to pay attention to that during this economic time that we have with our upturns that we have in inflation, prices of fuel and everything else. We are still a bedroom community for people who work in Lansing and travel back and forth. The ones that do that, there's a lot of them that work from home now, and I think you need to be aware of that when you make your decisions here. Like I said, I will provide you with a better numbers if you want numbers. I will provide you with that as they come. We're not quite done with them yet. We've settled our numbers between the treasurer and I have signed, my name's on it, her name's on it. And we're completely settled, but we're waiting on some of this assessing information to see where we end up for 2022, and I'm waiting for the assessor to take and turn over that to us. It'll be interesting to see what our new assessments are and what our total parcel counts are. If you drive around the township and you look, and I do that a lot, but there's a lot of new homes being built in Bath right now. I can name, there's at least 5 or 6 being built in Hawk Hollow over here, and there's other places you can go around the community. Other subs that are out there that are increasing in size. And there's some private land that's getting sold in the rural area, and they're building houses. So that's all I got. That's the taxes. Any questions?
Oh, that's not here.
I can provide you with the information.
I know. All right, thank you, Treasurer, that's appreciated. Item 11, which is committee appointments. This one has to do with 2 new people who are being added to the Senior Center Advisory Board, which you agreed to, the board did on March 7th. There are 2 that came forward. Sorry about that. Doris Bargy, I think that's how you say that, and Jean Jones. Oh, and I added to this so you would know, it was Trustee Fleetwood Bliss who suggested that they be staggered, which I thought was a very good idea. So you're able to see who it is that's going to be coming and who's going, so to speak. So far, it's kind of an interesting piece because where's Judy? Did Judy go? She left. She's coming up on the 20th. Nancy Holland is coming up this year, and Kimberly Faust, which is a new person who also took Sarah Loomis's place. So that's who you're going to be coming in front of you shortly. But the Senior Center is 3 years, and that's Doris Bargy. And Jim Jones. So do we have a motion? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I told you holler. Don't look over my left shoulder.
I would like to put Doris Bargy and Gene Jones on the committee. They were there at our last meeting, and
Yes,
they're very interested in the senior advisory committee.
both of them are. All right, so we have a second for the senior advisory board for accepting the board, their acceptance of Doris Barbie and Gene Jones.
Joe did.
And Joe seconded. Yes, I said we had a second. Okay, no, good. So now we need to vote.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
All right, item 12, which is the township committee report, safe routes to school. Instead of Jason, you'll hear the superintendent this time, so go.
Actually, I was going to invite Jason, if he has anything to add to this. I'm going to just brief you from an email that I received from Chris Hagerman on the safe routes to school process. So if I am incorrect, please feel free to jump in. Chris wrote that on March 8th, the Safe Routes to School Committee received an email from MDOT, the Michigan Department of Transportation, regarding our grant. MDOT and the Michigan Fitness Foundation, reviewed the grant and submitted it to the Federal Department of Transportation with their recommendation to approve or deny the grant. The email provided some areas that the Safe Routes to School group needed to revise, which included adding substrata to the information. Or maybe you meant data.
There's a lengthy list of comments.
All right, before the final submission. So they were meeting at that time to finalize the grant for the second submission. As Jason put it, when we received the email, the revisions weren't extensive and they didn't outright deny our grant request, so their committee is cautiously optimistic.
Yes, so part of the reason I kept on referring to the agenda is the budget is the last thing I was working on. The revision of the budget.
What's the
for
budget?
across the school. So we had successfully submitted what's considered a major infrastructure grant application for Safe Routes to School, which is a federally funded program that supports the building of infrastructure, in this case sidewalks as well as crosswalks, includes signs and the like. While it's a federal grant, which means that we don't have to pay it back. It's not a loan. And so this is something that will benefit our community quite a bit. The way that they do this is a 3-part review. So we had made it through the initial review. So Michigan Fitness Foundation, which manages the grant process, does the initial review, and then if you don't complete requirements, or if you just write a terrible application, they will outright reject you. We were not outright rejected, which is good, which means that we now will go to technical review, and that technical review will mostly focus on the work that the Clinton County Road Commission had put into it in terms of the design and specs for the sidewalks and crosswalks. We are cautiously optimistic that we will get funded since we weren't already rejected. And what that means is that we were given clear feedback on what we needed to address and change. And so there were quite a few things that we needed to change. A lot of things were very minor, like typos. Instead of saying elementary and middle school, one of our narrative pieces said elementary and elementary. So you can get a sense of how low level. Some of the other elements were we had built in speed sensing signs into the programming budgets, and that really needed to go under infrastructure. And so one thing I did not say is that there's two activities. There's the infrastructure piece, and then there's programming, so that we provide education and encouragement for students and parents to go off to school. And so we had to adjust what we were doing with the programming piece. We have 3 main programs that we're promoting for that. The first one is walking buses, so that the area, what are they called? The subdivisions. So Hunters Crossing, Mead Creek, Country Manor, Nelson subdivision, which is on the other side of Slate. In the village area, volunteers will be recruited to organize group walking from their home subdivision area to the schools and back. The other is a mileage club for students with small incentives. Another one is called a story walk, which is a partnership with the Bath Library where they will identify a book and then do themed walks. Some of those walks will be historical in nature, so we'll recruit folks who have a history of Bath and perhaps a school disaster to do a kind of a story walk, guiding students as to their own experiences of the volunteer. So we're very excited about it. We're well on our way. We should find out later on, I think in June, if we've made it past the technical review, as well as MDOT does a third review. And that will be MDOT's working closely with Clinton County Road Commission to just hammer out details and identify if there are there are additional ways that we can make improvements or minor adjustments that we need to make to some of the infrastructure.
When do we expect to hear?
Final, I think August.
Okay.
So again, we're on a very good trajectory. We have gotten really good feedback from Michigan Fitness Foundation in terms of how efficiently that we pulled together an application, and that we have strong partnerships between the schools, the police, the library, Township, and I'm sure I'm forgetting other entities, but so. that's
No
it.
budget. I have a question.
Yes?
Once this is finished in August, if that's your drop dead date, that they'll tell you, when do you start construction?
So let me also say, we actually applied for a second grant.
Mini grant?
The mini, so there's, the Safe Routes School Program has a major grant, which does infrastructure as well as programming. Then they do annual mini grants, which supports programming. And the idea is that they'll support a community for a limited number of years to have cohesive programming over time. So, so we may get funded based on a mini grant application that we submitted for programming that starts probably late August, if we're approved, of this year, 22. Then we will apply for 2023 funding. Technically, if we're approved for the major grants, the funding will be released in 2024, spring to summer of 2024 for use during that construction season. However, Clinton County Road Commission is very interested in combining the Safe Routes to School proposed work with the Webster Corridor Project, which is a MPO TAP grant. So what they're trying to figure out is Clinton County Road Commission can do the work before funding is released by Michigan Department of Transportation in what they call an advanced construction project, meaning they will cover the costs during 23 and then wait to be reimbursed in 2024. What Clinton County Road Commission is looking to do or trying to do is maximize the amount of federal funding for our township. And so there's questions about if we hold off until 2024 with both the Webster Road project as well as Safe Routes School, there might be more funding available. But they're still leaving in their pocket the possibility of doing everything in 2023. So we're waiting to hear technical feedback as well as feedback from MDOT and that negotiation between MDOT and Clinton County Road Commission before we finalize when
And working with the mini as well as the mini grant as well as the regular grant.
the mini grant, that timing will, the mini grant as part of the major grants. The major grant programming, sorry to be unclear here, that if we're funded will be 2024 programming. So that'll be fall and spring and summer of 24 to 25. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get 3 years of programming funding by applying for 2 additional mini grants.
Okay, got it. Any other questions?
One other thing I would like to add is in having conversations with the library, the library has been a tremendous partner in this application process. They're very excited about the programming piece, providing education materials and the story walks. In those conversations, we talked about how they're interested. They have a library of things, and so if you're not familiar with what a library of things is, I suggest you go to the library. Library of things, in just briefly described, is a library where you can check out not just books, but you can check out cooking pans and supplies, or a power washer, or other pieces of equipment. And they try to align that library of things to programming, how to use those pieces of equipment. So one of the things that they're interested in is kind of getting into nutrition as well as physical activity in terms of what they support the community on. And so I know as we'll talk about the comprehensive plan, but inside the comprehensive plan are some elements about how we can support our community in being more self-sufficient. One of the things that might be an opportunity down the road is a USDA inspected kitchen that would be available for rent or borrowing by residents to create packaged foods to sell at farmers markets or to others. We need a USDA inspected kitchen for that. And so I'm really excited about our recreation committee and our recreation coordinator and the partnerships that are going to be there. And my understanding is that Rebecca, our recreation coordinator, has already reached out and toured the library and building a relationship.
So that's what you're adding is just the relationships between Safe Routes to School and other entities.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? Any other? All right, 13, which is unfinished business, item A, items for introduction and discussion.
Thank you.
Mention of public safety.
So over the course of 3 to 4 meetings, we've had the opportunity to discuss the police and fire millage, and I go back and forth with the language about police and fire millage, and then there's the public safety fund. So the police and fire millage obviously funds the police and fire, or the public safety fund. Here I go with agenda and budget. And it's been my sense, and I may be incorrect in reading the room, but there has not seemed to be an overwhelming jump at increasing the millage, and I may have misread that, and if I have, I'm sorry. But it is my sense that with the uncertainty caused by COVID, things that are happening internationally, the Police and Fire Board did recommend to you an increase, although they did not recommend what that increase should look like. I provided numbers at the last 2 meetings, which were revised, and my sense was that we got to a better place with the numbers, although they were perfect. So I, in this packet, recommended to you and provided you with a resolution that you would adopt similar to past years if you did not choose to increase the millage. That is a draft. And I wasn't aware that when it printed out a little funny. So at the bottom it says yes, and on the next page it says no, but that's the actual ballot language that would appear on the ballot after being reviewed by everyone. If your sense is that you still would like to have a discussion about increasing the millage, there are still, including this meeting, there are 2 meetings in April for us to have that discussion. So if I've misread the room, there is certainly time for us to talk about this. Another item I would like to bring up, although I think others may want to comment on it. My intent was that if it was just a renewal, I think it's the last sentence, if approved by our residents, the Bath Charter Township general fund balance would be utilized to supplement public safety budget spending over the amount collected from the millage. There are certainly other ways to fund that, including tightening the budget, as well as the public safety fund now holds any monies that are unspent from previous years. So there will be potentially a fund balance in the public safety fund, which you can utilize those dollars as well to fund future years. My intent was only in saying that was to say we would need to somehow figure out how to supplement that spending if the renewal was not approved and placed in front of the voters.
Yes, trustee Liz.
Thank you. I was under the impression that we were still in the discussion phase about this and that we were looking to collect data from, we, the 7 of us, were looking to collect data from our constituents to understand what the best course of action in terms of a increase would be based upon the information that Beth created for us. So if you got any sort of vibe that I thought we should not do this, I do think we should do this. If we don't do this, we're looking at either supplementing with another $1 million out of fund balance. We've only got a few more years we can do this before fund balance is at 0. Or making some pretty drastic cuts that would certainly go beyond the police and fire department, because we couldn't find, I think, you could tell me if you disagree, $1 million just in those 2 budgets without really gutting both of those programs and losing officers and staff in both of those departments, which would mean things like probably tightening our budget on roads and other things that we've expressed interest to invest in. We might not be able to do things like safe routes to schools and broadband, depending on the cost structure of those things, because we would be looking to recover a lot of funds. I'm not interested in slashing really any budget. I think what we've invested in makes a ton of sense. I do think there's some ways we could tighten our belt. You're right, we could dip into this other fund balance a bit, but it still leaves us with a giant hole if we don't increase at all. My recommendation is that we put the renewal on the ballot as one question, 3 mills, and put the full 2 mills, bringing us to 5 total, as a new question, so that voters, if they thought did not want to raise it, they could still vote yes on the renewal and no on the increase. And then it's up to us to educate constituents about why we need that extra $1 million that the 2 mills would generate. I think that makes more sense. I think it gives us more sort of wiggle room if the voters resoundingly say no to this without us losing the entire millage. But I think when, I've tried to talk to as many people as possible, and I've said we're supplementing the police and fire budget by $1 million from the general fund, they just have no clue that that's happening. And so when I've explained, like, if we increase the millage, we wouldn't have to do that, it's sort of like a no-brainer to them. I know not everyone in the community is going to feel that way. We heard about some thoughts about taxes earlier, but I think it's fair enough for us to let the taxpayers decide rather than us say we don't think the taxpayers will like it, and let them actually have their way. And by doing 2 separate questions, it allows us to do that with little less risk than if we put it all into one and said it's 5 millages or no, or excuse me, 5 mills or nothing. I think that is perhaps a bit dangerous in this sense.
Go ahead, Jason.
So, I can't remember what the proportions were. The general fund has supplemented the police and fire millage for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do we know what's, and when I looked at it, the past, I think, 3 years or 5 years, we're at like something like 40%. Again, that proportion might be wrong. And prior to that, the prior 5 years, it was something like 38%. When we looked at what the current supplementation is, it's something like 42%. Again, those numbers might not be accurate, but I'm wondering to what extent we as a township have been funding police and fire safety general fund for years. We've been doing that, my sense, comfortably. I don't know if we've made cuts, so I just don't know what So I'd like to see some, instead of dollar amounts, some more ratio type figures.
We have in the past, where we have not had so much income, had to make cuts in the budget overall, which was helping to offset some of the police and fire. I think part of why you're seeing that trend is, I think this goes back to what, Karen, 1980 is the last time we increased it, or maybe that's the only time we've ever set it. So we're looking at, we've increased police and fire investment as the community has grown and is, I would argue, requiring of us at this point, but haven't looked to gain any more funding for them as we've grown in that way.
Prior to the 1980s, it was 1.5 mils, and then it went to 3 mils in the early 80s.
For both of you, I'm the one that disagrees with this, from the standpoint that I liked the one phrase that Karen put in there was check the budget or reduce the budget. I don't know that that's been done in a long time. I don't know if anybody's actually looked at these. I know we looked at these budgets, but even for us, I have a real hard time, and always have, with the amendments that come in, because I'm not understanding what all is being said. And I disagree with the fact that we need to have a millage increase. I disagree with the fact that we haven't really looked at our budget in a cutting fashion. What is it that we can cut out? What is it that we have to have? I think our residents truly understand when it comes to where their budgets are at. Police and fire have always been a plus in the community, and we've always needed them. They're not a necessity from the standpoint our fire department is absolutely statutory. Our police department is something we choose to do, which is a good thing that we choose to do it. I think that's a positive thing, but I do not think it's positive to add, in fact, I was taking the resolution going, this is really a good resolution, except there's a couple things I would remove from it. And part of it has to do with the fact that we're allowing replacement, maintenance, and housing, which is what we do automatically of the equipment. I mean, we do this without, why do we have to put it in words? In other words, it's redundant. To be able to say, that's giving permission to be able to say we can amend at any time. So I do disagree with the fact that what you're speaking of is to increase it. I'm not so sure I have to really think on it with the people in the choice. I think that kind of makes sense. People have to decide in this community whether they really want the 5 mils, which is the max that we can do as a township, that type of thing, or if they want it to remain the same and look at the budgets and decide, can we come $1 million? I don't know. Can we come up with 500,000? I don't know that either. I assume we can, but that we've already done. We've already accepted the 20, well, you did, I didn't. I voted against that budget. And I voted against it because there wasn't to me, a lot of cutting that needed to be done. The assumption is, or what I'm hearing is that our budget is where it should be. There is no room for cutting. Every budget has room for cutting, every budget. So I'm not sure our community is ready for that 5 mils, but I do kind of like the idea that they have a choice in whether or not they want to accept that, because they're the ones that's going to pay it. They're the ones that's going to come out of their pocket as to whether or not that's something that they want to go ahead and go with. So if we're still having a discussion on it, which I guess that's what I'm wondering, the resolution then was just as a draft. So we're still having a discussion on it.
So, what if people said no to the renewal, but then said yes to the 2? Because there's now an option on the ballot.
If that's what they want. We don't, the verbiage we put on it.
What, did I?
Back up with that one. You missed the number. It's not, they say no to the renewal, which is 2.99, but you're saying they're going to say yes to the two no's?
No to the 5.
Oh, he
But I
said
think
2.
what Ryan said was
If you
that.
ran them separate.
Yeah,
If you ran them separate.
right. And then and that's how you're saying what happens if they say no to one but yes to the other.
They say no to the renewal because it's higher than the other one.
Right.
And that's not clearly articulated.
I understand what you're saying now. It's gonna depend on the ballot language, which you put on
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to speak when we get where we can. Well,
Okay, you were next. Or what, Joe, did you have?
No, I'll wait my turn.
Okay.
I've got something to say, but I'm listening to you.
Yeah, that's what go ahead.
I read all this stuff, and I made a statement about taxes a little while ago, we all heard me talk about that. But I read this stuff, and I read it this morning, the recommendation here for the police and fire primary election to be held on August 2nd, 2022. And I disagree with one statement, and I highlighted it, and Superintendent Goldbrand talked about it with me today, we talked about it. It's not necessarily a given that the additions that doesn't get met by the police and fire village is gonna come out of fund balance. Number one, the thing we're all forgetting here, and I know we have some board members that's been here for a while, I've been here for quite a while. This has never been meant to take, and the police and fire village was never meant to take and subsidize the entire police and fire department or the public safety department's finances. It was meant just to be it was meant to subsidize it. It wasn't meant to pay for the total operation of these two departments. And it's always been meant that you've always had, as Jason said, you've always had significant money that's come from the general fund. I'm trying to think of the right word to use so I don't get slandered here. But supplementation's a good number, a good word. But it's always been meant to be subsidized by the general fund. Let's talk about this a minute, folks. The general fund is tax dollars. That's part of your operating money that you pay in your tax bill, of your 3 mills that you pay for and things. So the public's already paying for services, and they've grown to expect and depend on out of their tax dollars they pay. This township is not broke by any means. Yes, we voted this year to move the budget along. Maybe we didn't do it as well as we should have, but we did the best we could. We had 12 meetings with the budget this year. We've never had 12 meetings in the 20 years I've been here. I didn't go to more than, before this year, I probably didn't go to more, to be honest with you, than probably 23 or 24 budget meetings. I went to 12 this year, just for this budget. But that tells you how much we've scrutinized this stuff. So it's not like we haven't looked at it and haven't scrutinized it. We made concessions back and forth in budget workshop, and one person said this, one person said that. They changed a few things, and we got all done, and we voted with, if I'm not mistaken, we voted 5-2 for the Appropriations Act for the budget for 2022 here, and we moved on, because that's our responsibility as elected leaders, to take and come up with a budget and fulfill the responsibilities that we have that our residents expect from us for all the service we give. But my concern is this township's not broke. I said that a minute ago. We just got through with our audit prep. April 4th through the 6th, we'll have the real deal here. The big boys will be here, and they're going to come in here, and they're going to audit us. And they're going to look at everything. Last year, I think we finished up the year with about $3.8 million in fund balance. So far this year, in your ARPA funds, you've collected $684,000, and you're going to get. We chose to do a 2-point projection. In other words, we're going to get 2 different fundings. We're going to get $1.4 million, but we're going to get we got part of it this year. This last year, we're going to get the rest of it in 22. What they don't tell you is we've gotten another little shot of money from ARPA. Just recently, just the other day, we got another $2,700. That money all goes into a separate bank account, as we said we would, and it continues to grow. You have 4, if I'm not mistaken, 4 things that you can take and use that money for. You're going to have over $1 million of money there that you could use. Part of that money, you could use that for public safety to lessen the blow to the taxpayers, which I think that's what that money's intended to do, for public safety. But I don't think it should all be used for that. But you got to remember, you had $3.8 million where you started. I just got through going through the audit prep. I got a pretty good idea how much money we got sitting here tonight. And you know, you're going to come back, and what I'm a little unclear on is whether or not the auditors in the state of Michigan is going to take and use our grant money, because this is grant money, the ARPA money, as fund balance, or whether they're not. Whether they do or they don't, you're going to come in with $4 million, easy fund balance. You have a responsibility with this $4 million we're hanging on to here for protection of public safety and welfare of the public and everything else. All these other programs you want to do, You can take in a bond for them, you can ask for a village to do them, you can do all kinds of things with them. I don't think we should, I think that we're frugal enough with our money here, and I think that this economy is gonna turn around in the way of interest rates, where we're gonna start collecting a little more money on a little more interest on our money we have at the bank. It's gonna be a double-edged sword. However, we're gonna have double-digit inflation. We're gonna run the risk of our people have all these $300,000 and $400,000 and $500,000 homes who pay pretty healthy taxes in this township. They're gonna be subject to even more taxes. They're gonna have to pay more money for their living expenses because of the inflation, and I think we should be prudent. I really think that the township, this is just my opinion, I'm only one person. I usually sit back as a treasurer and I don't make suggestions. I try to count the money for you guys and let you guys run your own business. I did this a few years, and I'm pretty familiar with how you get voted in the office and how you get voted out of office. Here's the thing. I think you owe it to the public to really think about the money you got. Yeah, this year is $1 million shot, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna take $1 million out of fund balance. You're gonna appropriate it right here at this board when the time comes, when it comes time to do it. But you have a public safety fund that's gonna have a fund balance in it. It's gonna offset some of that $1 million from this year. You have your ARPA funds, which could offset some of that money for this year. And there's nothing saying that a year from now down the road, which I truly believe you're gonna have a better picture of what their economy's doing, that you can't come back and you can't make an amendment or something to our police and fire millage to do something at a time when we have more information, you have more numbers, you have better numbers, better data, and better stuff to tell you where you're at. And I've talked too much, Brenda, I'm sorry.
She's got it.
I went away for 3 days, and it's hard to say, it's bad to say this, but I thought about this a lot in 3 days I was gone, because this is something we're just gonna come back to tonight, and I thought, geez, I hate this. I don't like having to raise your taxes. I pay taxes. My taxes with my assessment's gonna go up $1,500 this next year with my assessment. I got a farm, I got a little bit to go, but I mean, I'm not interested in paying more taxes either. But I'm also interested in having a community that's progressive enough that has the stuff like public safety, police, fire, recreation activities, and all these other things, good roads and everything we have. We're not broke. We should, as a board, we should do better as a board to take and try to take it and facilitate this thing and figure out where we're going. I had a guy that told me that when I walked out of here at the last meeting, and he really ticked me off when he said that, but I was not in a good mood when I left here, but lots of times in these jobs, that's the way that is. But he's right, I thought about it. And when I see him, and I see him here tonight, but when I see him, I probably did make me think about that a little bit. We need to think about this as a board. I'm sorry, but I don't usually preach to you, and I'm not preaching to you, I'm just telling you how I feel. I agree with everything that's said here. I agree with you, Ryan, I agree with you, Jason. And I'm sure I'm gonna agree with everybody else, what they say, even you, Marie, I understand what you're saying. You don't understand budgeting and accounting as well as what some do here, but I understand where you're pain. I understand Dean's pain. I understand everybody's pain. But I think I really think you need to look at this. There's nothing that's gotta be done today. We're not broke.
Well, that's why she's got it under introduction and discussion. Does anybody else has discussion? Yes.
Thank you. You got to remember, your house taxes, your property taxes, the township only gets, what, 7%? The rest of that goes to the schools, goes to the Blue Bus, goes to the library. It don't all come to Bath Township. And we have to remember that. We're only a small little piece of the pie. That's all I got to say. Thank you, Marie.
You're more than welcome. That pie is a lot bigger than you think it is, and yes, we do take a larger chunk.
No, we don't. We take,
But that's here or there. We'll always disagree with it. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
Oh, now it's your turn. Trustee Benzie, go right ahead.
This board has spent, and the public should know, an incredible amount of time on the budget. I did a budget with the previous board, and we spent maybe 4 or 5 meetings, and then the last time we spent 12 meetings going through the budget. And we are in a financial position, and this is just my opinion, that for the rest of my time sitting here, we can run this place out of the bank. We could do that. I don't know, and I won't know, for at least another year or not, if that would be a good decision or not. So I agree with Treasurer Wishwasher. If that ended up being a bad decision, the community should know we would have the right to come to them in a certain amount of time here and say, look, we do need to increase this village. But I think right now, I'd have a hard time in these economical times coming out of a pandemic of increasing anybody's taxes. However, with all that being said, I'm very comfortable in letting the community decide what we do here. I'm very, very comfortable in letting them decide. Because it's their financial future that we're talking about. So that's where I'm coming from.
I think the community does have a right to make a decision.
Well, they need to be
I
part of
think
this.
that's part of the, I don't
absolutely.
necessarily mean those,
And-
not that I disagree with those that are sitting there, because I'm very pleased you're here. But I do think the whole community has a right to make
I
that
think
decision,
we
and
need to-
that's how they do it
I think
on
we
the
need to
ballot.
offer them a choice.
I don't know about the 5 mills, that's a little steep, but is that what you're thinking? The 3 mills or the 5?
I don't get to make this decision myself.
Well, no, but you have a
But
feeling with it.
let me just talk about the concept here of the 3 and the 5. If you don't do some kind of increase as you go along in life, all of a sudden, if you were to do nothing, and you get down the road here, and I'm gone, and you're a year into the next term and you're broke, we didn't do a very good job. That's just the reality of the situation, okay? So if we did, if you do a smaller increase as you go along, then when you get over here down the road farther, it's not such a big jump. And I think our sewer bills are an example of that. We increase our sewer bills almost on an annual basis $1. Okay, a quarter. And the reason we do that is so that if you don't do that for 8 or 9 years, which we've done, then all of a sudden people get a real big increase. And they don't like it. The little increases as you go along, people seem to be more accepting of that. So I don't know about the 5, okay? But I think before we get out of here, this term ends, we're gonna have to be making some decisions in this area. And I really do support letting the community decide.
Well, I think there's something to be said for that, but I also think there's a lot to be said for going back and revisiting what we've done with the budget, what we need to do, where the cuts need to take place.
Let me speak to that, Marie, because you have a hard time with the budget.
I do have a hard time with budget.
You do, okay.
Yeah.
The previous board had different experience,
Mhm.
and we just went through the budget process. And I just went through the budget process with you there,
Mhm.
and we sat through all those meetings answering everybody's questions and listening to everybody go back and forth. So everybody could get comfortable line by line. And folks, if you haven't done the budget, I think it's
You should.
32 pages.
42 to 45.
I was gonna say
Depending on how they print it from my eyes. Okay, and we go through that line by line, item by item, okay? And some of you actually attended some of those meetings. So we've done our due diligence on doing the budget, okay? The question in the future becomes is, how do we prepare for the future? And that's a real tough question. So I appreciate all of you being here this evening, and that's all I've got to say.
Well, I think the treasurer said a lot when he's, and jump in, please, which you will, which I expect that we're not broke, we aren't broke, but we keep developing and we keep growing even though we're not broke. So my point has been, instead, now that we're not broke, that we can go back and start looking at where we're at and what's being expected. No offense from that side of the table, but as a Democrat, this tax and spend stuff is something that I've always been kind of with my bristles going up a little bit with it, because fiscal responsibility is there, and government has its place, but it doesn't keep mushrooming. That's not what's needed. It isn't, but that's, again, that's a personal piece with me. And that's why when I look at the budget, I look at it from the standpoint of what can we cut, not what we can add, or what can we accept. It's, do we really need this? Is that something that we could go into it and look at it and have some serious discussions on what it's about? But instead, it was not quite the way when you say line by line. That's really interesting, but the line by line didn't have much to do with, well, do we really need this line? Is this one that we can, do without? If we can't do without it, then we need it. That type of discussion, I'm not sure
That happened at every meeting.
when,
Yes, it did.
honestly, I don't think we were at the same meeting, but that's okay. And if that's what you're saying, then, I happen to disagree with that. But then I'm not a team player. I love it. Don't look at me like that. That was, you say it, you mean it, live it, learn it, wear it on your forehead. But that's part of what I'm trying to say, is that for me, it needs to go to the budget and look at it with a real serious decision of what it is that you actually need. And that's a question. So, anybody else?
You don't think we were serious in in them budget meetings?
About?
The whole budget?
No, I don't, but that's okay. I'm only one vote, so it doesn't make a whole lot of difference whether it is or not. Yes.
I do. So the options are, you have 2 more meetings. I had hoped to have this, a decision by the end of April. So you have
Okay.
2 more meetings to discuss this. For your understanding, because some of you haven't, you've seen it on the ballot as residents and voted, but maybe don't understand why it's done particularly the way it's done. In the past, the board has run the millage renewal on the August primary ballot so that if it were to fail, it could be put on again in November. So you have a couple of different options here, and these are things I would really like you to think about and come to terms with what your preference is. If there is just to be only a renewal, that could go in August. If you were to be open to, and I hear a lot of you saying the community deserves to vote on it, that could also run in August, or it could run in November. You could even decide to run only your renewal this year and run an additional next year. If you, I hear some of you saying, I don't know what the conditions are gonna be in a year. So you would go through the 2023 budget process and plan your 2023 budget, but then in 2023 also potentially hold an election where you ask the voters for additional half mill, mill and a half, or 2 mills increase. So your millage renewal and your millage increase would not have to run in the same calendar year.
Why is this not going to be run in November instead of August?
It's always been done.
Oh.
It's the way it's this way
It's how this group right here
That's
decides
right.
whether it runs in August or runs
Whether
in
it runs in
November.
November. Okay.
But
I get it.
I wrote the resolution as to how it's been done in the past, and past boards have determined it should run in August. So there was an option. If you lose that $1.4 million of funding, you have an option to go back to the voters in November.
Right.
So this board needs to decide whether it'll run in August or run in November. But it can also decide to run one in August and run the other in November. So if there could be confusion.
Total confusion. Yeah, that would not work well, actually. Any thoughts on that? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. You're next.
I still like the idea of running in August. I still like the idea of doing 2. Maybe it's not 2 mills as the increase. If we land somewhere else, I could certainly be open to that. But to Joe's point, I think we have to start moving from the 1980s into 2020s eventually, because there will be a time where we do not have this much money in the bank, and we will have to either make drastic cuts or increase the millages by a lot, and I also don't want to do that. So I stick firm to that. I think Jason's question earlier is very provocative. So if Brenda or someone in her office could find out how other communities do that, what language they use to not incentivize someone to go for the smaller amount in the raising rather than the renewal, I think that is an answer we need.
Oh, when you run them at the same time?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Could we choose 2 different amounts, like, I don't know, 3.5, 4, like, I'd have to research that.
Yes, if we run them separately, there'll always be a 3 and a lesser, unless we're saying 3 and 3, but I don't think anybody is saying we should do that
So
here.
that's an and question, could we use an or question? Like, we could raise it 3%, a renewal, or we could raise it 4%. Is that how I understand?
I think you lose your renewal language when you do that, right? I mean, you tell me, I don't
I
know.
have to research it. Yeah.
Right, and part of what you want is to be able to say renewal,
As 3 mills.
right, people feel comfortable with the renewal.
Okay.
If you were to say 3.5, let's just say, I'm throwing a number out there, or 5, then it's new.
Yeah,
Okay.
So you could run it in August and go for, and just as an example, go all the way for 5. But it's new, then it's new, it's not a renewal.
yeah, I think the renewal name builds trust in folks and they feel like they know what this is and can count on that. That's just my opinion, though, Brenda. The other folks have done this split issue, so they've got it, they've had to have solved this issue.
First of all, I'm gonna say something here, and I don't wanna alienate any of my colleagues on either side of my body here, but I'm gonna tell you something, in my opinion, as a taxpayer. If I had a board that was responsible for levying my villages, taking care of my services and everything else, and they got elected and I voted for them, I would expect their professionalism to know exactly what their numbers are and to know what they need to do, and not leave this kind of a conversation to the board. Because to me, that I would be totally in favor of having to say, well, you know what, we're not really sure how much money we really need here, so and I'm just saying this, I'm not picking on anybody here, but I'm not sure how much money we're gonna need here, folks, but we could use 2 mills or 3 mills, but what the heck, if we could go for 5, that'd make it easier yet, and we'd make our life even that much better. Well, which is it? Which do you need? Because that's what you're charged, and that's what your duty is when you come in here and you sit down, and whether or not you agree with the budget or you don't agree with it, that is what your duty was. And that's what my point was earlier when I spoke to that. However, I'm gonna lay one more thing out here that I thought of as I listened to the conversation back and forth about the years. Another reason why you might want to take and wait a year or just do a renewal is all these houses we talked about. I think I told you there was like 9 new houses, and I think there's 7 of them in the Hawk Hollow complex over here, and there's some others in some of these other big subs. The ones that's in Hawk Hollow, they're let's face it, folks, they're $500,000 and $600,000 homes are built over there. You're not going to recognize that money from them until 2023 fall. Because they're gonna be taxed in the rear, and you're not gonna see a full assessment on them houses till 2023, 2024. At that point in time, if you renew this thing for, is it a 2 years? Is what we're
Yes.
going for? If you renew this thing for 2 years, you're gonna be right back to where you are again, and you're gonna have a little better idea how much money your taxable value is increased and what your township's tax rate is, and everything along that line. That's another piece of this thing is such a caveat here, because that township seems to, somebody was here, I think it was Adam, that talked tonight about Okemos being the place to be, and DeWitt was the place now. Well, let me tell you, Bath ain't a bad place to be. For what we offer in the way of services and what we have, that people are building in leaps and bounds around here, and they're still coming out here and they're still doing this. I'm not opposed to having the public have input on things, but I'm sorry, I'm a little bit old school on this, but you was put here to make a decision, and I'm not afraid to make one, and I can't be in my business. Because I talk to these people right there at the counter when they have a problem, and I heard from a lot of them this year, talk to me about their taxes and this, that, and the other, which I understand it. But I think that, I think they expect you to know what your business is here. And I'm not gonna vote for two different villages because I know what the business is here. And I think the business should be the same as what it should be. I'm not saying we should stay in the 80s, but thank God we did. The taxable, you know, the thing that Tom King told me, and I've told you this, when I told another big developer this last week, that told me when I took over as treasurer in 2000, he said, you know, Steve, he says, you're never gonna have a problem with the general fund, because every year it just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. And he says, you're gonna have more and more to do with it. Well, if Tom only knew today what we do around here, he would be shocked, I'll tell you that, because it's a lot more money than it ever has been since 2000 when I started. But here's the other thing, he said, you know, the sewer fund's what you gotta watch, because that can go like playing euchre, zeroed out 4 hands. And that was his thinking. There was so much truth to what he told me over the years. And even when I went away for 8 years and I came back, it was an old hand I picked up, and I was able to look at the numbers, look across the spreadsheet and see what the increases was. We still were putting a whole bunch of money out of the general fund into public safety. And it's there. Jason said it. I don't know if his number 42% is right. I guess you'd have to look at what the overall number, I think you'd have to look at the increase in the budget of the police department. We have a police department here that is the eye-dropping piece. It's the most sought-after department there is in the greater Lansing area because of our work conditions, because of what they get paid, because of everything, they have the equipment they have, and we have we just hired, I think I can say this, we just recently hired 2 county officers that left the county, one from Clinton County, one from Ione County, Eaton County, and came here and went to work. You know why? They're young people, because we have a better pension program, we have a better program, where they have a better work conditions, we have a community that work in here that isn't, got too many riots, they don't have to come to the township board meetings. That's a joke. You guys can laugh about that if you want, including you, Bernie. That's what it is. So I don't, it's not all about the police department, it's about the fire department as well. And the public safety fund, and that's by statute, we made that change early so we would jump on board. All these account numbers and everything, which I've told you at the last budget meetings, and I've told you every time we have a meeting, are all gonna change by the Uniform Charter Council, by the state of Michigan. And we're about halfway ready to have that done right now. Our change period is actually 23, but we're gonna be ready in December of this year before I leave. And that's gonna be the what it's gonna be. And that'll change the way some of this budgeting works back and forth, and who likes to gut this, who wants to take this, where they wanna make cuts. It's not fun doing all that, but it's all gonna be part of our job, and that's what we're put in here to do.
Okay, I only have one more statement. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go right ahead.
All right. I can certainly support running a renewal as long as we, as a board, have a general understanding if for some reason, and we should have this understanding anyway, if we were to experience some financial difficulties, we could come back and ask the public for more later if we needed it. So I have no problem with just running a renewal.
Okay, my only comment would be, every one of you have said you want public input. August, you don't get public input because most people are on vacation. November, you have a lot more people that come out, particularly this year, but you will next year, 2024, 2 years away, politically speaking. So I am definitely for having it in August or in November if we have it. So, and the renewal, I happen to agree with the renewal. I don't agree with the increase. I don't think at this point, I think the budget needs to be looked at in order to, I think, facilitate more of a better opportunity for our community to be able to have its say in what happens. Give them some time. Casey, go ahead. Then we gotta move on. No, keep going. I'm just telling you what's on the agenda.
No, we can keep going.
Nope, go ahead and say what you gotta say.
Given the information that my colleagues have shared, I think where I stand is that I'm absolutely in favor of more information and using data to drive our decision making. I worry that we don't have enough time to collect that information, especially if we're going to take in a meaningful way what our community has to say on what they want. And so I too am comfortable with running the renewal for this year. What I personally don't care if it's primary or the November election, because we already know that this has been supported for decades, this military.
Right.
So, but if we do just go with the renewal, I would want us to have a real plan on what we do over the next year, so that we were prepared to make data-driven decisions.
Okay. Anybody else? Good thought. So where does that leave us at this point?
So I would bring it back for discussion again next time. I need to understand what is, I know you mentioned some ratios that you had calculated. If that's something I can put in front of the board, what else can I bring to you?
To all of us. Right?
You, as a board,
Okay.
to you. Everybody gets the same information, so to you as a board, what can I bring you?
I would like to know, what are the full scope of millage rates for our neighboring communities?
Okay.
Are we in fact very high, or are we in fact low? Or wherever we are in the middle. And so, I think part of that is understanding.
Yeah, I was thinking, because I was going to.
You need to include into that, I'm not trying to help you.
So let me finish what.
You need to make sure you compare size.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one thing.
That's all, that's a big thing, that's the whole thing.
It's,
and if we have population rates as well as millage rates, we break that down and analyze that. But I think the other is that what are the public safety millage rates for neighboring communities as well? So I think part of it, I'm going to, I think the supervisor's concern that she expressed previously about, it's not just this millage, it's the full package of what our community is paying in their tax bill. That, I personally find that helpful in understanding what's the market rate, what do people expect, and, are we lagging or are we ahead of the curve?
we had one thing that could be removed, what you say. The other thing I have to add is the medium income. Because when you deal as a size, we think that's an important piece for what? Well, all depends on whether we include the students. We don't include students for like 3,000 something. We do, we're like 12 or 13.
Our population is 13,000 people.
With the students.
Our population is 13,000 people.
With the students.
Well, there are people.
Of course there are people, but I'm just saying, because they're here for August.
The census says our population
I
is
know what the
13,000
census-
people.
Yes, I know.
Students account
But
for about
anyway,
1,600.
what I'm
folks.
saying, I think we're saying the same thing, is that you need to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So you're talking income and you're talking size of communities, because it does make a difference. If you've got a community that's wealthy in what they do, wealthy from the standpoint of where they work, what they do, what their income is, if two of them work, if one works, as opposed to, for us, if we have a wealthy section, is that section going to be different, which we do. We have this incredible section, which is, they're like $800,000 for their homes.
As someone who analyzes data all day, every
Yes.
day, I'm not going to sit here and look at one source of data in isolation. There's all sorts of different data I'd like to have access to make some decisions. This is one of them that I have not heard any of us, I have not heard mentioned. So knowing what our community, our neighboring communities do is one piece of information. Knowing what our, I think, where the treasurer had asked for deeper dives into different property owner types or property types. I think that was also another source of information. I think hiring a marketing analyst to look at, what is it that our community can handle? Doing a survey, doing some public forums where we bring people in to have conversations. These are all different sources of data that should drive the decisions that we make. Pure and simple.
Property tax administration is accomplished through, as Jason just said, I asked for classification of different types of property which we have in our community. And all that is put together, and that makes up the total SEV of the community. And this was my point I was trying to make a minute ago, which I didn't do a very good job of, but you need to know if you're gonna compare with another community, you need to look at their total SEV and what their total amount of state equalized value is in comparison to what Bath Township says. You can compare us to Meridian Township or DeWitt all you want. DeWitt's the only one that's gonna come close, because the equalized value of a township like Delhi or Meridian Township or one of them isn't nowhere near what Bath and DeWitt is. Bath and DeWitt are at the last assessing go around, the 20 here, that report I got, and I haven't got the new one, I asked about it today, and I don't think it's available yet. The last one that was out there, I think it was about $80 million difference between us and DeWitt, which is pretty darn close when you figure it. And why it was so close is because of all our commercial housing, our multi-family housing. And that is what drives your tax rate. That's what your millage is going to be figured off of in the end. It's going to be figured off of that. It's not going to be figured off of apples and oranges. It's not going to be figured, I'm not being sarcastic.
I get it.
It's not going to be figured off of census. It could be. That's data, just like what you just said. You can look at data all day long, and you can look at that, but what it's going to be figured off of is the tax. When you go up to the county and you turn your tax assessment into the county for whatever it is, whether you're levying 5 mills or 3 mills, they're going to take what your state equalized value of your township is, and that's what they're going to figure it on. They're not going to figure it on anybody else's township. They're going to figure it on Bath Township. And it's going to be off what they have right there and then, and that's how tax administration works. And that's how that's put together. That's the only thing you need to do. I ain't saying you can't do all this other stuff, but I'm just saying that to me, I'm not interested in what some of these other communities are doing. I'm interested in what we're doing here in Bath. That's what I'm interested in. And that's the piece that I want to see. And like I said before, in 2023, going into 24, with all these new houses you're building this year, you're going to see a significant increase in your taxable value in your SEV of the township because of all this increase. You very well could see 2 more apartment buildings over in Chandler. You could see more development right across the street over here at whatever this thing is over here at Somerset. You could see more right next door here between here and the highway. These other subs are going to fill out that are not filled out. The 12 lots that's left over down here in Lakes of the Pines, or whatever we call this thing down the road here, and I can give you the thing because my brain ain't working on that stuff. That's going to fill out. People are going to keep coming here. They're going to keep wanting to buy and want to pay. And the one thing I want to do is I want to make it affordable for the people who've lived here for years, as well as the new people to be able to live here. And that's what I'm looking at, and be able to be protected. That's the only thing. I have a hard time with public safety decisions sometimes because they're near and dear to my heart because of my ancestors and my kids and everybody else who's involved in it. But it needs to be looked at. I agree with Marie, it does need to be looked at. Some cuts may need to be made, and they can make things work. Who knows? But the other thing, I thought of one other thing too, guys, that you need to think about here, girls, is
Boys and girls.
yes, you have more people who rotation here are ready to leave, who's been here for X number of years and they're retiring. And after they retire, when you hire a new officer, you're not hiring them in at the same rates as what you were the old officers, maybe what they were making. So that offsets it. Some of your expenses there. I believe wholeheartedly that you're going to see some more money that's going to come in the way of public safety money. I think somebody will come up with that before they're done. I think you're going to see some more government grants to Township needs to take advantage of one of them, especially with our fire departments, and that's been talked about. There's already a bill that's out there that they're looking at grants for disadvantaged fire departments for struggling communities who are taking and trying to keep up with the growth, which we qualify for this. Even though we are flush, we qualify it because we have to take and make major investments. And there's money that we'll receive from that. So I'm just not I agree with everything Ryan says, and I think we can't afford to keep putting $1 million in there. I thought it last year, at the last budget with the last board, I looked at it and shook my head, because it was up there last year, it wasn't this high as it was this year. But I do think that you need to be patient. I tell the superintendent that, and she gets tired of hearing me about this. You need to be patient, and you can't just take and get in a hurry when it comes to money. You need to let it flow a little bit, and you need to see what's going on.
We need to cut, make sure that that's.
I haven't learned a lot more, but I have learned to be patient.
Okay,
Marie,
so, go ahead.
I'd like to have the police chief and the fire chief here and explain the number of increase in runs that we're having from 1980 till now, because this makes a big difference.
We've done that with the budget, but I understand.
We
what you're
did.
saying.
They were here and talked about it.
Yeah, they were. So you
I'll
want to
invite them.
bring them back to do what they.
And make sure he brings his number of runs that
Their
they do.
runs, Yep,
Yep.
I'll ask them for historical, as far back as they can go.
They can go a long ways.
Yes, they can. Yeah, they can. I was there when they were doing them. All right, is there any other discussion that we have with this? If not, we're going to move on to the virtual public meeting under the Open Meetings Act, the American with Disability Act. Deputy Superintendent, thank you.
So as was discussed in your January 18th meeting, it was requested by this board that I bring back a recommendation for virtual public comment. So I have provided that recommendation to you. I did some research based on what the best way to do that with our current equipment and the equipment that I have quoted on the back here that I believe would be helpful in updating what we currently have to provide a better online experience for people. The option that I have found that would work best for public comment that DeWitt Township also does is a Zoom conference call. So people are able to dial in with a phone number and then during public comment, similar to how we were doing it when we were doing full-on Zoom, myself or someone else would ask somebody by the last 4 digits of their phone number to unmute if they have a public comment, and they'd be able to make the public comment by dialing in that way. And then as for the equipment, this is the equipment that I believe, in my own professional opinion and based on a quote that we had from several years ago for updating this room, that's the equipment that I think at the minimum should be updated. If there are any questions, I can answer those. Yes?
Anyone? Go ahead.
Are we in violation of the ADA right now?
I can answer that. I don't believe that there is a requirement for us to offer anything specifically for these meetings. I believe that's in talks right now in the legislature to add that, but right now that is not included in the current ADA or the OMA.
Thanks.
I got a couple of questions. This list that you provided with us, or for us, could you tell me where they're coming from?
The prices?
Equipment?
Yes,
Equipment.
it's from a website called B&H. It's a professional video and audio company that I have worked with in the past.
Is there, when you say in your statement that you didn't know what the shipping cost was, anytime that I've ordered, I've always had shipping costs, and I understand unless there's a third party involved. So if there's not a third party, I don't understand why we don't have a shipping cost. The other thing is, there is an option to that, and I don't know if you know it. It's the Amazon Prime account that we have, okay, where there's no cost for shipping.
I don't think she's purchasing those,
No,
these items.
I would not. A lot of these items are not available through Amazon. It would need to be through a professional video and
So that's the
audio
third
company, which is the company that I have taken these prices from.
Okay, So you haven't checked with Staples or Home?
They don't sell this type of
They don't
equipment.
sell this?
This
they
is,
can't-
this
can
is
they get it?
professional. Probably not, because they do not sell it.
Well, no, sometimes they order it.
Okay, I have provided, I will just say this as just to cover it. I have provided this based on the professional agencies that I have worked with in the past with my own video experience.
Then, my last question would be, you're asking for 10,000.
Yes.
You're saying the total is like 4,300 or 836. That's about $5,000 more.
Yes.
Okay, what's that?
I specified in my last sentence
Because you didn't know
that
the
it does
shipping?
not include the cost of shipping or the additional cost for our IT personnel to install this equipment. IT may have to purchase additional cords or things of that nature when they're
Sure.
installing this. I won't know what that looks like until they start installing it.
But it's our people, the ones that we contract with. all right?
We contract with them, but it's not included in our current
So
contract.
they can charge whatever
That
it
we
is that they want to charge to do it. Is that what you're?
Yes, they would charge whatever the rate
Okay,
is.
so
to
you
do
haven't
this.
talked to them as to how much that would cost?
I don't know until I know if I'm gonna get all of this equipment and what that will entail.
Have they seen this list?
No.
Oh, so they may know, and I know you work with this company, and I get that, but they may know someone or something that's cheaper than
This is
that.
based off of market rates, so it's not gonna be drastically cheaper somewhere else.
Okay, so because it's based on market rates, the assumption is this is what the price is?
This is the ballpark of what that would be, yes.
Okay.
It may be different from a few dollars, $100 maybe, that's probably the biggest difference it would be.
No, it just seemed like that was a lot of money, a lot of difference.
Yes, I
with-
understand.
with
It would be
shipping.
up to that amount, I
Right.
would not
No, I
necessarily be
understand that.
using the full $10,000.
Right, and what happens if you don't use, suppose you only use 7?
Then I only use 7.
So the rest of it then goes back to wherever it was that it came from. We don't know where that 10,000 is coming from, do we?
Steve can tell you.
That's my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, where's the 10,000 coming from? There's two that are asking.
It would have to
Did
come
we
from.
did we budget for this?
No, it would need to be a budget amendment.
This would be in addition to, it would be a budget amendment.
Okay. Well, you're not gonna like this, but we've had some other recommendations that we ought to do in this room. So if you're gonna bring this back to us, I don't have a problem with this $10,000, but maybe we ought to look at what additional needs we need here besides this. People recommend
That
large
estimate was-
screen TV.
The last professional estimate we received was $50,000.
And that's for a professional installation from a professional
every-
installation company.
And
Yeah.
every
That
whole-
would purchase all of the equipment themselves, they would do that
And I know
installation.
we didn't budget for that.
No, we did not.
Would that include this? That 50,000 that you're talking about, would this include what you've requested here, or is there something different?
It's similar to this, to what I have requested, but it would also include hiring that company to do all of that for us.
Instead of our own IT.
Having looked at doing similar things for my own employment, I can tell you that what has been brought before us is some of the lowest prices I have seen, which I want to thank Taylor for, keeping that perspective in terms of, we are money conscious
Yes.
in this township. And so the 50,000 is what I would have expected to come before us, if not more. The other thing I'd like to say is I think these would be things that we could charge to ARPA funds, especially if there's ADA compliance. And so that might be answer the question of where the money comes from.
Okay, no, that would be an interesting, can we bring this back then? This is something,
Yes, this is just for introduction and discussion.
this is
So
just.
this will come back next meeting.
Because this is talking about discussion. Okay, no, I appreciate that. All right, we're on to, is there any other, before I start jumping?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. This is a draft, okay. All right. B as in boy, items for action under 13. We have a second reading of our ordinance. And Superintendent Hildebrand, I think you have that.
If there's any questions, I will try to answer them, but you, at the last meeting, had none, so I was looking for action.
I move to accept the second reading and adoption of ordinance 3174 to amend the site plan review process.
Second.
All right, Brenda, you got it. You got to make a choice. All right, so now we're going to look for, we've got a second for the adoption of the ordinance 3174 to amend the site plan review. Correct? Okay.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're still on 13, still on items for action, only this is a small b. It's a resolution to adopt the comprehensive plan.
Yes, so as part of adopting the comprehensive plan, the highest governing body is asked to approve the plan. What I have drafted and placed before you is a resolution to adopt the plan that would be included with the plan. So in the back of the plan, so that other agencies, when we forward it out, will know that it's been adopted by this body.
Move to adopt the comprehensive plan.
I have a question. Well, go
I'm
ahead.
going to accept his motion. Go ahead and have discussion.
All right, got a motion, I think. Yep, got it. All right, my question, the only question I have with it, because this is really a very, very good piece. I think Miles did a great job, and I think you worked on it, I did you too, or Deputy Superintendent. My question that I have with it, as I'm reading through this resolution, it talks about basic plan and then adopted. So our basic plan is not our strategic plan, this will be our,
This is a comprehensive plan,
This would
also
be
known as a
Bath.
master plan.
so this is Bath Township's master plan, even though it was created by the planning commission, correct? Am I understanding that?
That is the correct process.
That is the
No,
Planning
that's what I-
Enabling Act,
that's what I
yes,
asked.
provides for the planning commission to craft the plan and forward it to you for your approval.
But it doesn't say planning.
After we approve this goes back to the planning commission for final approval and public
Okay.
input.
So they'll
No.
put their name.
No,
Yes.
This is
been
this
to
is
the planning
done.
commission. It's done.
Yes, except according to the Planning Enabling Act, it goes back, after the township board approves it, it goes back for one final, I think, public meeting. I may be off on what that, the nature of that meeting is.
Okay. I'm not.
The planning commission is not planning for that, so we should probably make sure
It's my
that.
understanding this is the highest governing body, the final step.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with that step. I just recently read that and I didn't see that, so.
Because I was only asking why the planning commission name isn't on it. It's- When you look at this, it looks as if we did it, you know, Bath Township, but yet, well,
It's-
and the planning
it's the
commission
township's
is part
plan.
of, yes, they are.
And it has all the planning commissioners.
Planning commission is on it.
Worked on this is named inside the plan, which is consisted of like 3 planners and
Yeah,
many,
and the
many, many
planning
public
commission.
planning commissioners and.
I'm listed twice.
I was gonna say, Jason's supposed to play, which is
Well, he
okay.
was
it
on
should
the
be.
planning
Yes, it
commission
should
for
be.
a significant amount of time.
So it's acknowledged that they're part of what goes on, because that's really important. They did a great job. I was there at a couple of their meetings, and they put a lot of blood and sweat. into it.
Any plan like the Parks and Recreation plan is the township's plan,
Okay.
once it's
Nope,
adopted by this body, so.
That was my question. But I still, all right, so the basic plan being planning commission, the adoption is what we do.
Yes, and I will check,
Jason,
I will check to
check.
see that it doesn't need to go back to the planning commission. If
Okay.
it does, I will forward it back to them.
All right, can we have an amendment that states that, so that
It doesn't indicate.
Don't need it.
you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will check.
Okay. Nope, and if you find that he's correct, what happens?
I
It
will
goes back.
give it back to them, and I will
Okay.
send you an email telling you all that he's
Okay.
correct.
I don't think you have to do that.
No, I do, so that you know that that's.
It's the planning commission's business, and so we will do our part tonight, and then we will be done.
I didn't mean that with sarcasm. I
I
meant
was gonna
that
say, I
that
think
there
it's
was an
sarcastic.
then I would let you know that it has in fact gone back to the planning commission.
If that's what it's supposed to do.
If that's what it's supposed to do.
Correct, okay. Nope, that's,
I stayed at home.
Okay.
She's right.
all right, we have a second.
Yes.
Yes, okay, just Joe, okay. So now we're going to have, the vote is going to be to adopt the comprehensive, I love it, I hope you'll go back. Okay, to adopt the comprehensive plan,
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Amorigi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to turn the page to the resolution. It's going to have to do with the support of the Bath School Museum efforts.
Yes, so thank you, Madam Chair. So at your last meeting, you had a presentation from Mr. and Mrs. Hagerman, members of the James Cousin Museum, the Bath School Disaster Museum. And during that meeting, it was suggested that they could partake in the funds that we had set aside of $20,000. Formalizing this in a resolution would give me the permission I need to move ahead with them and secure these funds. Yes. I just think it would be in all openness for us to formalize this with a resolution. Makes sense for them and for us.
Oh,
Were you done speaking? I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
I was gonna say-
I'm all set. Thank you.
I think she was letting me know that you
Yeah.
had your hand up.
Thank you.
So trustee, Steve Bliss.
So, I would propose we change the language of this, that we're not putting a resolution to support construction of a building,
Okay.
that we would call it the efforts to plan and fundraise for the construction of a building. Because again, the lease says that if we put a building on that site, we are responsible as the township for upkeeping it.
Okay.
And I think we all agree, we're not going to upkeep
I think
a $2 million new
even
building.
more specifically, if you wanted to, I know they said that it would be for the architectural plans. So I don't know if that,
I mean, I would propose we'd keep it broad, because I think in spirit, I'll speak for myself. I certainly in spirit support their efforts to plan and fundraise toward a building, but I heard Mr. Balzer's comments at the beginning, and I would like to make it clear to him and anybody else listening, this wouldn't be township owned, this wouldn't be township governed, we wouldn't be paying for it, we wouldn't be keeping it up.
so you propose amending the Title II for language?
So instead of saying the committee's effort to construct a building, to say the committee's efforts to plan and fundraise for the construction of a building.
Plan and fundraise for the construction.
Knowing that if it gets to the construction phase, which I hope it does, we would have to renegotiate that lease so that we're not, at least I envision, we would want to renegotiate the lease.
Okay,
Right, on that note, I would also like an amendment with this.
okay.
I don't know if we need to vote, but as long as we're, I think it's under discussion. Do we have to vote on this?
Yes.
We do have to vote, all right.
What do you propose?
Well, my thought would be that at the very last, where it says the bottom, or the bottom, let me read this. The Bath School Museum efforts to construct a specific 3,800 square foot building.
Which number are you?
I'm at the very bottom, where it's all in caps.
Bath Schools Museum.
Committee's effort to construct a specific 3,800 square foot, because what we're
You don't
talking,
know that yet.
pardon?
You don't know that yet.
No, they, yes, yeah, they talked about a 3,800 square feet to an 8,000. That's what,
So that right
so our
there,
resolution says that.
so trustee Funes Bliss's amendment
For
at the top would also duplicate down to the motion made by board member blank to adopt the resolution. That language would be repeated in that area right there.
Okay.
So it would say the committee's effort to plan and fundraise for the construction of
For
a
a
building.
specific building of 3,800 square feet. That's what they talked about initially. I've listened to them twice, and like a 38, because that was the museum.
Where was she at?
Then it went up to 8,000.
Yes, they did, but 38, what makes 38 square feet?
38,000
like,
square feet?
yeah, 3,800. Because I was trying to explain with those numbers. It was like 150 feet long.
36 by 100.
26.
So,
So, and that's a museum, you're quick. I had to sit and figure that out. No, I have to sit and figure it out.
they have an initial concept drawing, and they still need to do a bunch of work on their part to understand where to place the building, the size of the building. Perhaps it might be 2 buildings just because of some sort of architectural or, landscape issue. Who knows? But the resolution is simply in support of their fundraising and planning efforts, not of.
No, I understand that, but also, when it says a building, that means they could put a 10,000 square feet.
They might
building.
put a yurt, I don't know.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So
Well,
I don't know.
what this is doing is saying I can move forward with the $20,000 and support
Correct.
their efforts to get architectural plans, basically.
Correct. For a 3,800 square feet, instead of any building, because any architect can come in and say, I guess what I'm saying is, or what I'm looking at, help me out here, when you do the museum, because they're in 3 where I vote, every year or so, and so I go in and I see, what's there. An 8,000 square foot building at Cousin Park's huge.
But we're not gonna
3,800 's
dictate,
huge. Well,
we're not gonna dictate to them what the size is, though.
Why not?
Because it wouldn't be our thing.
It's not.
If this goes through, it's not our thing.
It's not our building.
project. All we're doing is we're donating funds from
We are donating funds for them
for the
to,
architectural design of the possibility of them creating some sort of a building. Like
They may build nothing.
It could be,
That's correct.
there's plenty of pictures in here what they thought they might like
Yes,
right now.
and I have-
But there's nothing
yes.
that's in written until they get the architectural design. And then they gotta move forward and they gotta get the rest of their fundraising money to be able to take, and they said, I believe he said they're, correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but I think it was $1 million they needed.
for 8,000 square feet.
To build a museum, but they may just wanna build something to put around the cupola. They don't know what they're gonna do until they get past the engineering drawing piece of.
Oh,
what they're
that
gonna
would be wonderful. See, I didn't understand that when I listened to them at all.
Because that's what they
Because-
talk about a lot of stuff, but that's what they
Their
said.
hope is
They're
building,
they eliminated these 2 other ideas and went directly to the building.
that's their hope.
Depends how much money they get.
They may decide in a year that they can't get the support to build that.
No, I understood that, but that's why I was saying 3,800 square feet as opposed to 8,000 or 10,000 or.
I don't think we can,
Because
I just don't
that's-
think we can dictate to them.
The 20,000 is not even for the full, it's not
No,
even,
that's-
it's not even the full amount of the building, it's 20,000.
Right.
What that's doing, that's giving them an nest egg to start with, so they can get
For
other
their
people to
plans.
donate to it, depending on what they get in the way of donation, will be what they decide to draw. And it was very hard to listen to that the other night. I think everybody here was taxed at the end of the meeting, but it was very hard to listen to it, but that's what my understanding of what their plan is. And reading this, if you go over this, and look at this, it pretty well dictates that, tells you what it is. I mean, they even did one as far as they used a picture of the old fire station
Yes.
in front of the insurance company on Saginaw Highway, which was the fire, I can't remember what the, Karen and I talked about that today, the Firemen's Association, that's actually our accounting building now, they own that, Maynard Conservation owns that building, and that's what they own, that fire station is in that thing.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's been there since I was a little kid.
Oh,
But,
they're-
I mean,
that's
but they're,
But part of what.
$20,000 ain't gonna get them anywhere. I mean, think about what it
That's-
costs to build, they wanna build
Okay.
a trail around Park Lake, for God's sakes, that's $2 million.
That's not what this is saying. What I'm saying is that's beyond the 20,000. I think that's a good spending, a good start for them to be able to look at. What I'm saying is that as a township, for us to say we can't dictate to them what they do, I'm not sure, because can you imagine an 8,000 square foot building on Pleasant Park?
Yeah, I can.
Seriously?
Yeah,
That would go
seriously.
back to the trees and all
Depends on how many
the.
levels it is and all
I mean,
sorts
The
of.
building that I went to school there, that they tore down, was bigger than
Yes,
that.
sitting in the back.
That-
That's
that
absolutely
went to- I
correct.
mean, there's, I can see at least 2 people in the audience that went to that school, same as I did.
And incidentally, I'm on the museum committee if you have any questions.
I mean, it was bigger than that. Well, it took in the whole property, but
No, that was my only concern with it, because I absolutely agree that, and I think it's a great idea. But I'm not sure by saying that to construct a building is really where we want to be at from that point.
I think Mr. Bliss's amendment fixed that by what you said. And that-
How to fix it by fundraising and.
That was a very good catch on your part.
Okay, read it back to me, so.
Resolution to support the Bath School Museum Committee's effort to plan and fundraise for the construction of a building in James Cousins Memorial Park.
So will it come back to us as to, or back to the school?
They'll want more money.
Pardon?
They'll want more money.
Oh, no, this is a big
You want,
mistake.
Marie, they will come back and ask for more money.
Okay, they'll come back and ask for more money.
Now, you might not give it to them, but they will come back and ask for more money.
Can I set the item in motion?
Well, that's what I said, if we're doing this, you said go ahead with the discussion, so,
You can still go on with discussion, I just said, can I second this
oh, yes. I thought you already did.
one?
I didn't put it in motion form, but happy to do that. Moving to approve the resolution with the edits as presented.
I'll second.
Both edits or your edits?
Just-
My edits.
Just your edits. He just wants, he doesn't want, and that's, all I'm saying is that, for me, that was a difficult piece. When it says just a building, meaning they can put inside building.
But this does not authorize them to build anything.
Their efforts to construct a building.
No, efforts to plan and fundraise.
To plan and fundraise a building.
Yes.
So if they get,
They still have to come back to us and the school. The school has also not given them permission to build a building.
they think they have.
No, that's
Okay.
not what they presented to us.
Well, that's not, when I listen to this at school and here, that's not, I'm hearing a building. I'm not hearing any of the others because they already decided that.
No, Marie, we're talking about 2 different things.
Okay. All right, we got a pass, you got a second, so now we're gonna look at the amended instead. Trustee Stephen Bliss, put it on. A resolution to support, make sure I get it right, the Bath School Museum Committee's effort to plan and fundraise
For the construction
for the construction.
of a building in James Cousins Memorial Park.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry. I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Westminster?
Feel
Mr.
overwhelmed.
Westminster?
yes.
Ms. Howe?
Let me think on it. Come back to me.
Okay. Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Amarigi?
Yes, please.
Mr. Betsy?
Yes.
That went too fast. I'm only one, I still don't understand, maybe it's just my narrow way of looking at it. When you say constructability. I'm gonna say no. Doesn't make any difference, I asked anyway. Okay. Now we're going to go to the clean.
Prime. Prime and Newhoff.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You're Prine and Newhoff.
Prine and Newhoff. So what I have brought before you is, I wrote you a memo explaining that Michigan's Clean Water State Revolving Fund, as we often call it, the SRF, provides low-interest loans, and it assists local municipalities in improving their construction and improvement of their water pollution control facilities. That is the same fund that SCUMA has gotten permission to put their improvement project before. I am proposing that Bath Township put projects before this same fund, in that there is $800 million available through the state, And because we are part of both projects, we can be considered, if they approve our application, we can be considered a disadvantaged community. What that means for us is principal loan forgiveness. It is very possible that on the projects that we do on the infrastructure here in Bath, they will forgive part of our loan because we're part of both projects, which would be huge for us. We submitted an intent to apply, which is simply a letter that says we wish to put projects before you. We had a Zoom meeting with, it's Eagle now, I'm sorry, I still want to call it DEQ, with Eagle and their team to go over the projects that are listed on the third page of this. The biggest one being either the lining or the upsizing of the pipe that runs down Webster Road, which is huge prior to, because everything in this township comes north through this pipe. So prior to the construction of the Webster Road improvements, it would behoove us to either line that pipe to make sure that it is safe and secure, or at that time decide if it's possible for us to upsize that pipe for the more efficient removal of waste from this community to SCUMA. So Prine and Newhoff put together a proposal that would prepare these projects for the state's consideration for a cost of $30,000. That amount is available currently in the Sewer Fund Operations Department under Contractual and Professional Services line. I've listed the line there for you. I'm asking you to allocate and approve me to enter into this agreement with Prine and Newhoff.
I so move.
Wait a second. I have a question.
Yes, please.
I would like to amend it where it says recommendations allow the superintendent and Jeremy Tolliver to engage with Prime. And the only reason I'm saying that is because you're going to slap me twist like because I'm going to say that. But I am going to say it. When someone flushes a toilet, it goes to SCUMA. So SCUMA should be here, and that's where you're involved and Jeremy's involved. And so he should be part of what's going on here in the township. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were going to argue with me.
I will.
My questions aren't with you.
Oh, okay.
I understand how SCUMA works, so I don't really need to worry about what you're saying, but I got a question. Is this, number one, this relining, this comes from our, part of our master plan, sort of master plan,
It is part of our master plan.
Webster Road. And you and I have talked about this, and we talked about it today. I asked you this question. This also includes the possibility of the fact we may bond for the future for the equalization line.
That's correct.
We've already purchased land we own over here, just on this piece of property over here, to take and complete the last phase of what we've started. It comes up through Webster or Drumheller Road here, but this all includes that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
It's all inclusive.
This includes as well the equalization basin, as it's referred to.
And for the board's understanding of this, this is the piece that you're voting on here has nothing to do with SCUMA and the fact of the finances, because SCUMA is not the one borrowing the money. The money is being borrowed by, we're participating as a group with 4 municipalities over there, but the money is going to be guaranteed for the good faith and credit of Bath Charter Township for its share. That's what the difference between the superintendent's role is, to take and look out for that. That's your role as a board to take and make sure that she's doing that. I don't know, I suppose probably I got to play in somewhere.
Right, you print the checks.
But unfortunately, I'd like to leave a legacy here where we're not completely broke. I was concerned about the estimated process here. That's that we've included all them pieces that's in that.
Yes.
And does that work in conjunction with how does this line up with our 2023, the guys, the road guys are gonna have to help me out here. Are we online here for 2023, the road, I heard somebody say earlier.
They're trying to align
they're trying-
23 or 24.
23, 24, and the road commission's good with that, and everybody else is.
They're the
good with
ones
that?
trying to align it.
Yep.
Yep. And Brad has actually had these conversations with Doug and with Brad, or excuse me, Mark.
When you guys on the road committee, you two guys have heard this, that when you talked about it, so I'm up there, you must have had your meeting the other day.
The issue is the county's trying to get us as much money on the project as possible. So that's their job. And in '24, we might get more funding on the Webster Road project. However, if they can still build it in '23 and build it and bill it in '24. So, the answer to your question is that, does that help? Yeah, they're right involved in this.
That's what I want to hear.
All right, my only concern with putting Jeremy with them, when you try to say they're two separate pieces, we're gonna be adding another SCUMA individual, correct? Because we're using so much more.
There's a possibility,
Okay.
it's my understanding, and I spent a few years over
I
here,
know.
obviously, but there's
That's
my
right.
understanding that with the capacity issue alone with the rebuilding of the plant, we're
That's right.
probably taking, add gallons, enough gallons to the municipality daily use that we will become a bigger constituent. Possibly
Possibly.
become a bigger constituent,
Possibly.
user of it. But understand when they say that, because I've been there a while, I understand how this thing works. Everybody else is gonna be a bigger
Yes.
constituent
Yes,
as
that's
well,
correct.
because all their capacity is
Yeah.
gonna increase as
Everyone's.
well.
Yep.
So it's kinda out there whether it's gonna happen or it's not.
But that's why, I guess, I'm thinking Jeremy is, and please, he can come up and jump up and.
I don't see why you can't to begin with. I never have seen why you can't begin with. When I was on that board for years, I picked
All
and
of
choose
them.
what I wanted to go to. If that's what he wants to go to, fine, but the responsibility of what you're doing here is not his, and I wouldn't want it if I was him.
No.
It's hers. And-
I
and
understand.
That's the point right there, and that may even be the reason why I'm not on that board anymore.
Well, you chose not to be on the board anymore. That's why Jeremy's on the board, so he can thank you.
If you think about it, you talk about all these millions of dollars, if you worry about $1 million for the police and fire fund, I mean, this is over $5 million, folks. That's what this is.
That's exactly right.
And it's on a fund that's nowhere near as plentiful as what the general fund is. This is the sewer fund, and it's very, you talked about it earlier about doing it by a dollar. And that's good you brought this up, because I'm gonna say that they say this, because maybe somebody got this question. You're still, because I asked this question first thing today, that's the first thing I asked you when we got back. You're still gonna do the thing, the actuarial with Baker Tilly. You're gonna come in here and they're gonna do a 10-year plan, maybe a 15, who knows, and they're gonna tell us and do an actuarial and tell us whether we need to raise our rates every year $1 to be able to maintain with what we have for the current revenues and everything. If we make more, and if we get more sewer connections online, that's fine, but we went ahead and we estimated it, and we came up with a number to give them an idea of how many we're gonna have by going back and looking at building data on the sewer system. Not the whole township is on the sewer system. Currently, Bath Charter Township sewer system is paid for by the users of it. Not all townships are run that way. Bath has always been run that way, and it still is, but if we're not paying for sewer, we're not on the sewer.
Again, you're making all the arguments for me that would include Jeremy being involved. And the reason for that being is, one, he's a consumer, two, he's on SCUMA, which means as a consumer for Bath Township, he would understand exactly what it is that we need and what our engineers are. He is an engineer, is true. So being a consumer, being the first one, he has to pay for the sewer. Being an engineer, he also understands the language of what's being said. So it's important for him, I think, to be at these meetings. Three, if we're talking about the fact that, you know, as a community, whoops, I'm sorry, hang on one second.
I'm patient.
You're not, okay. I always try to let everybody else go before me, that's why I didn't see you. The third point being that for him, it's an important piece to know if in fact you're going to have enough capacity where we're gonna have to be adding to SCUMA. I don't think you can separate the two. I don't think that's something that really can be done, because if your people are using your sewer, we're going to require that they be involved with their tax dollars, this 800 million that everybody's trying to get dollars from all over the state of Michigan probably, of attempting to do this. I think he has an input with that so it helps as he goes to be able to do and be able to make those decisions. I think it's important for his opinion to be there because he is a consumer and because he is an engineer and because he's part of this community. So this isn't done in a vacuum. This is done, that was one of the main reasons. Once you decided that you wanted to step down, that there be someone there in the community. You're in the community, you're on the north end. He happens to be right here in the center. So there's an understanding, and you're not, because you're like I am, you have septic tanks, you don't have sewers. So that's not something, frankly, other than the dollar amount. It's hard for us to understand that every time you flush that, it goes through our pipes into DeWitt, which is what happens. So consequently, with him being excluded, like he has been, this would be a good thing for him to be involved in. So I am going to, sorry, I'm so late on this. I am going to move my amendment, and I'm going to require and request, and hopefully you'll agree, that Jeremy Tolliver be with the superintendent in making those decisions.
I have several things about this. What we're agreeing to today is allowing Karen to sign a contract with this firm. Not to meet, not to plan, but allow her to spend this money with this firm to write a grant. It is inappropriate for us to insert any community member into the contracting policy of our chief executive. That's an authority we have delegated to her and her alone. No other committee member has ever had the authority to contract with outside firms as a signatory, which is what your change to this would be. Second, SCUMA is an authority that he sits on the board of. Every day, staff of SCUMA are meeting to discuss projects. No other board members are going over to SCUMA in their staff process. The same is true here. Our staff runs our own process. Board members at an authority down the street don't get to be in on staff discussions. That's true of all of the other authorities and all of the other committees that we're involved in. Jeremy is a board member who gets to make decisions and vote on what happens at the authority in a governance situation. He is not our engineer. He's not a staff member. We have those folks for that. So it's an inappropriate placement for him.
It's not inappropriate at all. And the reason it's not inappropriate is simply because, as a superintendent, she has to look for information. Who else in your group that you have is an engineer, other than who we contract with? Nobody. He is. And he also has the same benefit that you have being involved in SCUMA. So yes, this is very appropriate to put this in because you have the input that needs to be done. And yes, our staff doesn't have the expertise. She has the expertise because she's been here a lot of years, correct? I mean, you've been with SCUMA how many years? You were there.
I was there for 13 years, but what would you do if you didn't have an engineer on the board? Would we go out and find an engineer in the public to take them, be
Oh,
involved in
heaven's
this?
sakes, no. No, you would not, but you have one. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve this professional service proposal as given to us by the superintendent without any amendments.
There's already a motion on the floor, and I have to make it, and that is to add Jeremy Tolliver. So hang on.
Al made a motion.
I made the motion.
Al and Jason supported.
You made the motion, and you
Jason
seconded
supported.
it, and there was discussion. Now, I put a motion out there.
No.
You gotta vote on the first one first, and then you move to the second one.
And then to the third.
Could be.
Could be here that, it could be here that long.
No. Well,
9 o'clock, we're
that's-
up.
That's what we're hoping, that it runs that long.
Bet you are too.
Quit raining so much. Anytime- See, for me, when you have a motion and it's accepted, you have a discussion.
That is true.
And that's what we're
Yeah,
doing.
but you
You're
haven't-
proposing a second
I'm
motion.
proposing a second motion.
That's where that's not allowed.
That's where the problem. So,
He doesn't have to accept your amendment.
no, he does not. So you guys go ahead. Now, do we understand? Is it clear? Do I need to
To
repeat
approve
it?
the professional services proposed for Prime and New House.
Yes. think that's good.
Trustee Rosecrans.
Yes.
and Trustee Almarigi. Supported.
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, do we go for the second motion, or do we just, because this was already passed?
Do you have support?
Do I have support? Sure, I have a second motion. And that motion is to add,
Did you get a second for your motion?
that's what I'm asking. If I don't get a second, you don't know what happens.
As a good board member, I'll tell you what, I'll support this,
You
just
said
to
that
get it on the
before.
table so we can make a vote on it.
All right, take a vote. Second amendment, adding Jeremy Talbert to the language because it is very appropriate.
Mr.
I need to restate
Wisswasser?
it.
No.
Mr. Benzi?
No.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
No.
Mr. Rosecrans?
No.
Ms. Butler Challenger, no. Ms. Howe?
Yes. We will take the third motion and move forward.
That's no one else's.
That's all.
Okay. All right. It appears now that we are at closed session, and in order, well, it says under the Section 8 for ND of the Open Meeting Act to consider purchase of real property at 16086 Park Lake Road in East Lansing. Action item is to go into the closed session.
I move we go into
No
closed
action will be
section.
taken on the purchase.
Support.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yeah.
Ms. Howe?
Yes. All right, so we will be in closed session, and we'll be back as soon as, whenever.
We'll be back before 9.
We've done this, this will be the third time, so.
Yeah.
We'd just like to have a township donor who could provide those.
Say the word, dude. I'll make a run right now.
You know what, I get this from you, Joe.
I got two of these now. Would you like a double?
I have my own, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to do this. I am. We'll bring it back to session. We're done with our closed meeting or closed session. So, I was gonna make a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the closed session and resume the regular session.
Support.
Want to take a vote on it?
Sure.
Okay, so we're gonna close. Thank you.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Mr. Funes?
Yes.
Mr. Emariti?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
All right, we are going to take, for the purchase, we need an amendment.
I think that is wait till next week and
Well,
next meeting
We're
and
finishing what we're doing.
and have,
We're finishing what we're doing.
no, that isn't the rule, Marie. We quit at 9 o'clock.
Let's see the rule.
Yeah.
There's no new business when you
It
start.
says no new business, you finish what you do. So, we need to finish.
Now let's go.
All right, motion?
Is there a resolution written?
Yeah, I'll move to authorize the superintendent to engage with Hamp Matthews and Associates, Inc. for the completion of a Phase 1 environmental site assessment for a cost of $2,300 funded out of capital projects land improvements.
Was that Joe?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, do I get to say that again? One more time. It just says recommendation that the board is, if the board is still interested in pursuing purchase of 1608 Park Lake, authorize the superintendent to do so.
No,
No.
we're not authorizing the superintendent to buy the property. Do you want me to repeat the motion?
Whatever you decide, you want to do the environment, that's what I said, you want to read it again?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So my motion was to authorize the superintendent to engage with Hamp Matthews and Associates, Inc. for the completion of a Phase 1 environmental site assessment for a cost of $2,300 funded from the capital projects land improvements line item.
Exactly. All right, motion, you have a second?
Yeah, Joe.
Oh,
Ryan and Joe.
You just repeated the motion for you, the motion is second.
okay, Joe. Okay,
Yep. Mr. Funes?
Yes.
Mr. Emariti?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
No.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, it is, and what was that tonight? That clock there? We can adjourn.
You got.
We
you
got
gotta
public
have your
comment?
You
Comment.
want,
You got to have public comments.
is somebody gonna, is there, I guess I didn't realize anybody went to public comment.
Public statement?
I just have one public statement to say.
Okay, shoot.
If you reline,
Go up to the microphone.
oh, excuse me.
I didn't hear you.
I want the audience at home to hear you. Rick.
Yeah. Hey, where's the camera? If you reline Webster Road sewer, it decreases the size. We don't like that. We like big, to get rid of all of it. So I've put my motion in right now to replace that thing.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, is there anybody else? Apparently not, so we are going to adjourn with the unanimous consent. Is there anybody who objects?
Yes.
Then vote.
Yes.
Okay, we take a vote.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Mr. Emariti?
No.
Mr. Benzi?
No.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Stay here.
No, I'll game to finish this.
You didn't finish it. Oh,
Ms. Howe?
no,
Oh, shit, guys.
Ms. Rutland Challenger, yes. Mr. Rosecrans?
I'll vote yes.
Mr. Stevens Bliss?
Yes.
all right, our next line of business is going to be 14, new business. Items of introduction and discussion dealing with the expansion of the newly formed Recreation Advisory Committee. I think I did. Did I put? Yeah. You're not on there. Okay, well, request for expansion, is that in there? Because I didn't see. All right, what I'm asking is, is that, okay, is that what I've got here? So did you have a chance to read it?
Yes.
Everybody did. So you're understanding, between the two of you, that we're only going to have 6 members instead of 7. I'm asking for 1 independent who doesn't belong to the farmer's market and doesn't belong to the Park and Recreation. So,
Just let me verify one thing, you actually have 7 members, because you have a board of rep that's on this.
that makes 8.
No, currently you
Yes.
have 6 members plus a board of reps, that's 7.
And I'm asking for 1 more.
So you want 80.
So it's 8.
So are you offsetting, pulling voting power from the board rep?
In a sense, yes, because the board rep, one of you are becoming, either one of, hang on a sec. One of you will be coming from either farmer's market or from Park and Recs.
They both serve
So
both
they
aspects.
both serve right now.
No, they
So-
both have served on both.
Yes, so in that capacity, what happens is, if you have a split, then it'll be up to the board member to make that determination, depending on where they've been at. So is that a
But
trusting
they've
factor?
both been on
That's
both.
what- They have been on both. And it's a difficult decision. The board has to, the board that's going to be there has to make the
He
decision.
got a hand up for
I
you,
see
but I
it, he
have
does.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I don't think it's necessary. As an advisory committee, the number of times, in fact, I can't say I've ever served on a committee at Bath Township where there was a vote that was split in any sort of way. These advisory committees don't tend to operate that way. So I think the likelihood that there's going to be some sort of, feud of people coming in with different perspectives, I think is unlikely. Eventually, we'll replace people who, we lose to attrition with people who would just serve the Recreation Committee. They won't come from one committee or the other. So I don't know that this is sort of a temporary problem that I also think doesn't exist in actual time. Because again, advisory committee not making decisions, and I can't imagine there would be something that would pit a farmer's market person against a Parks and Rec person in that cut. And then the last thing I'll say is, we have voting rights in all of the committees, so I think it is up to us to make decisions about how we want to vote at the committee. So I'm not looking to diminish my vote at any committee, and if it's me in this committee, I think it's our job to show up and vote and take the heat from that or take the praise from that.
Yes.
I haven't served on an advisory committee in quite a long time, but is it my understanding what you're saying, Marie, is they go through and they count for 3 members on one side and 3 members on the other side, and then they look to the person who's the board member, they say, okay, it's up to you, you're gonna make the decision.
That's what would happen, that could happen, yes.
No, I'm asking, does that happen now?
No.
No.
I've never seen that in 20 years of being on a board, being singled out.
But
like
we've
that.
never combined.
If it is, it's not according to
No.
Robert's rules of running a meeting
We
unless they
haven't
have their own
combined
rules.
before. This is the first time this has happened.
That's the reason
So,
why, that's the reason
With the
why.
combining of it, it makes more sense to have one.
Wasn't the police and
independent
fire board
than it does to have
separate?
one by
Police
one.
and fire
And
board?
as for the idea of it being.
No, it's always been together.
And if you're going to lose by attrition, you're talking 3 years.
So have we decided that we're automatically reappointing existing farmers market and parks? So we're gonna go through an application.
Yeah,
process.
Taylor and Karen asked everyone to reapply.
Yeah, so.
I've asked people that are interested to read.
So we may reject people's applications and opt for new people.
You
Or we may
think?
not, I don't know.
Well, let me put it to you this way. When you end up having a committee that is equally split, the way this is going to be, I didn't support that, I don't support it, but that's okay, it's here. So as long as it's here, to me, it makes more sense to be able to have one independent voter, so to speak, that hasn't been either or of these committees, as opposed to, now when I get applications
Have we
from
received
people.
applications?
Pardon?
Have we received applications?
We have one, you know that, we have one.
No, I don't know
Oh, it's always given to you.
No, it's not. It's given to her.
It's the same thing.
I don't know her, but I asked you a question because I don't know if there's been any applications.
Ask your deputy.
I'm asking you because.
Yes,
it's
one
to
has
you.
come in.
Okay, thank you.
That's, but I just
Okay, all
assumed
of
you guys, you always get
We
them.
do not, if they directly emailed them to you, we would not get them.
I didn't get a direct email.
Well,
That's
I
why
don't
she's
know that.
asking you.
This case, no, it's not, because they make copies of it and send it.
I did not
Yes.
have this.
Oh,
I
man.
did not
All right.
Listen,
Nope,
please.
nobody's ever seen it. Nobody's ever seen it.
I did not
except me.
see Doris Bargie's or Jean Jones's either.
Yes, you have. 'cause
No,
gave
I
you.
did not.
You
You
gave
gave me
it
to them for the
us.
packet,
Yeah.
for the
No.
packet.
I told. All right, nobody's ever seen them except me. I'm the only one that ever gets to see them, so it's okay. So the question being, one, yes, we're gonna have 3, and they're gonna be chosen. I mean, they'll put the applications in. I have not received them, only from Adam, you know, the chair of the farmer's market. Nobody's seen them but me. And so consequently, the thought was, if you end up having 3 of each, you definitely need to have an independent. The independent can't be one of you because you both, even though you've served on both committees, doesn't mean anything. It means that where you're at and what you need to do, whether it's for the farmer's market or whether it's for park or whether it's recreation, you're gonna have to make a decision. What I'm trying to do is not have you have to do that, to put you under the pressure of doing it. Of course you go and vote. God, I hope you go and vote. But
now you're-
what I'm saying is that you're gonna have one independent to be able to make that
Sway
decision.
the thing in case you don't like the way it rolls.
Approaches everything.
Sway the,
So she approaches
in
this,
case you
they're
don't
gonna
like
come
the
in
way
and
it
fight.
rolls.
Yeah.
Doesn't have anything to do
So,
with me.
so
I've never seen her happen in a committee
Doesn't have
either.
anything to do with me.
I have,
Appreciate-
well,
appreciate
I've
the
seen
idea, but I
committees
do wonder
that
if perchance we do appoint
the
someone who
chairman
has not
has
served, and to
has
this
changed
new
the
board who has
vote.
not served
Right.
one way or the
previously,
other.
that will
Yeah,
achieve
but
the
that's where you
rule
have
without restructuring.
Yeah, but not a number of
you
people,
know, a committee,
5, 7, 9.
Yeah.
Or going against
Yeah,
how we
you're right.
structure committees.
Make the motion, go on.
All right. Well, you're the one that said no, you wanted to
No,
stay.
you do it?
You said you want.
No,
Can I make a
Well,
discussion. It's not
No,
discussion.
it's not discussion.
That's all it is, it's not.
I think that creating a committee with 8 people provides the opportunity for more things to be forward than, I mean, it's an even
That's
number.
right.
So I,
We have a lot of committees that are even numbered.
no.
No, we don't have any.
7 or 9.
None of them are even numbered. If they're even numbered, it's
Yes.
because they're missing, if they're missing,
They're missing
they don't have somebody appointed to that seat yet.
Is there one with even? Which one?
Right now, Public Art has 8 because there is a vacancy.
They have
But they have
vacancy, which would be 9.
They have 9 people.
But they have 8, but they all,
But they should be 9.
and now thank goodness your senior citizens will have 9 plus.
Okay, well, there's nobody
One of your-
intentionally set and
One of your board of trustees will be there to make it 10.
Why would you put an
So,
independent, somebody
It's
that
9
don't care?
including half.
Okay. Now you're included in the 9.
Yes,
So it's okay.
So I'm just asking, there's not one intentionally set at an even number.
We have never done this before, where you've had 3 of one, 3 of another coming together. All I'm saying is that it makes sense that you have one independent, so that when this discussion takes place to our director, which I'm tickled pink we have one, that she in turn will be able to take the advice of what it is that they're trying to accomplish. That's all.
Or reject it.
Or reject it. That's, she'll do whatever her decision is to do. So anyway, that's where it's at. So, are we ready for a vote?
What are we voting on?
Thank you. It's a discussion item, what it's supposed to be, so.
Is this
come
what-
back for a vote.
That's what you're voting on?
We're not gonna vote,
Yes,
it's a
we're not
discussion
gonna
item.
vote.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so are we ready to, are you guys ready to adjourn, or do you still want to stay? Okay. All right, through unanimous consent, is there anybody who wants to not, or do you want to vote?
I want to vote.
So there's, otherwise it's unanimous consent, but one is saying, wants to vote, so there you go.
Just
Okay,
again.
we're gonna vote to adjourn because one person says,
So I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, you're gonna move?
I'll second it.
yeah, but you're voting no.
Well, I can still vote it. I can still,
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
no.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Bensky? Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we will be adjourned. At 9, according to that.
That's fine, isn't it?
I never recognized you.